Peace and love, y'all. It's your brother A.D.V.I.S. And we are here with another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays, Season 2, Episode 26. So, as we usually do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put, of course, the topics for today in the comments, as well as I'm going to also put in the logo for our background. So as y'all coming in, y'all tell me how y'all doing, how y'all feeling, and what's the word. So appreciate y'all. As well as appreciate those who will be watching this now. And for those who will be watching this later, either on Instagram or YouTube, if you are on YouTube, please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for your boy at A.D.V.I.S Speaks, because there's going to be more content like this and other things coming in the future. So please subscribe to your boy. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Right now, we are about at almost 350, but let's keep it pushing and join your boy over there, because we're going to keep speaking when we need to speak. But other than that, for today's episode, as we let more people coming in, today we're going to be getting into the topics of current events. So speaking about what's going on currently, as well as after that, we're going to talk about daydreaming. It's something I know I've done a lot of in the past and still do to this day. And lastly, in connection, we're going to talk about the pros and the cons to lucid dreaming. So all very hinted around not only the ideas of sleep, but being a dreamer. So for those who do not know, my name A.D.V.I.S is an acronym, and within that acronym, the D stands for dreamers. So a dreamer's vision is seeing success. So we're going to be diving into this whole idea with this dreaming today. But appreciate y'all as we let more people come in. Let me know how you feeling, how you doing, and what's the word. Put it down in the comments. And hopefully y'all can hear me. I sound well. Hopefully the background music is not too loud. But as we are doing that, let's go ahead and we're going to transition to this show song. If you don't know by now, it's all good. You'll learn sooner or later when we play it, and you'll get accustomed to it. So then you'll end up knowing what's the word, y'all. So they be going around trying to figure out what's really going on with everything. So we gotta just tell them like this. What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? Tell them like, what's the word? What's the word? What you heard? We gotta know, yeah, what's the word? Peace and love, y'all. It's your brother A.D.V.I.S, and we are back with another episode of What's the Word Wednesday, Season 2, Episode 26. Another one in the books, y'all. So, like I said before, thank y'all, welcome y'all, coming back for another episode. And with that, when y'all come in, please tell me how you feeling, how you doing, and what's the word, what's going on around you in this crazy world that we live in. As well as shout out to those who are watching now, as well as those who will be watching later, especially Instagram and also YouTube. If on YouTube, go ahead, subscribe to your boy A.D.V.I.S Speaks. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos to come in the future. We on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and we're almost there. We're still a little behind, but it's all good. So follow, subscribe, and tune in for more. But with that, y'all, for today's episode, we're going to get, of course, the first section that we usually do. We're going to be talking about current events. So I'm going to pull up some articles that I've been already looking at and what has really caught my attention as of late in the news right now. And then after we talk about current events, then we're going to get into the subject of daydreaming, dig in, figure more. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of lucid dreaming. So this is going to be a very spatial, I don't know how to really describe this, but we're going to be digging into these dreams today, see what this is all about. But with that, y'all, let's get into these current events. So, again, I have a lot of the current events right for me. They're anchored around whether we're talking about health updates from the pandemic going on with the shots, as well as updates to what's going on in worldly affairs, and just a few notes to folks who are posting misinformation around on the web. So, let's get into the first article. And this first article comes from NBC News. Headline reads, Judge orders hospital to give COVID patient ivermectin. Again, judge orders hospital to give COVID patient ivermectin. So for those who are not too sure what ivermectin is, I know that we'll see what the article has in here and what it shows, but ivermectin is a drug that it's usually given to help with tapeworms and other different things. You know, I may be completely wrong. Still, don't quote me on it, but you can look it up. Ivermectin, IVERMECTIN, ivermectin. So, 2 paragraphs, like we usually do, and we are out. Okay, so those paragraphs that we got. Article reads, Ohio judge ordered a hospital to give a horse drug, ivermectin, to a COVID-19 patient last month despite doctors' protests. In this particular case, it's ivermectin. So, we'll see. The Butler County judge said August 23rd ruling that Westchester Hospital must fulfill the patient's wife's request and administer the drug prescribed by Jeffrey Smith, 51, by a doctor unaffiliated with the hospital. Ivermectin is a drug primarily used to deworm animals and has become the latest false cure for COVID-19. The FDA has not approved it and actively discourages its use to treat COVID-19 in humans. Interesting. Jeffrey Smith of Hamilton, Ohio, tested positive for COVID-19 on July 9th and was admitted to the hospital in Westchester Township July 15th. The lawsuit his wife, Julie Smith, brought against the hospital said. On August 1st, Jeffrey Smith was intubated, and placed on a ventilator. His condition worsened on August 3rd after his sedation drug ran out, which caused him to wake up and rip the air tube off his esophagus, disturbing and or breaking the feeding tube, which caused food particles and toxins to escape from his lungs, which the complaint alleged. But by August 19, Jeffrey Smith's chances of survival dropped below 30%, and the hospital had exhausted its course of treatment and COVID-19 protocols in treating him. I'm not going to go any more further into this, but basically this is going into one patient that was given ivermectin, which they say is a horse drug, which mostly works with deworming animals and is not a viable or FDA approved drug to be used on humans, but it was used for this COVID patient to see if there would be any other ways to help, because they have exhausted all that they could do for him. I mean, there's more to read to it, but I'm not going to read the rest of it. But that's the first one, the first case, because for some folks, ivermectin has been just one of the topic or trending words and medicines and drugs that's been talked about so much right now. So I just saw this article and I thought I'd speak on it and give y'all a little information on what ivermectin is. But with that, what's going on, Sue? Peace and love to you, fam. What's the word? Let me know how you doing, how you feeling. What's the word? So that was the first article. Now we're going to get into the next article. And this article comes from U.S. Today. What's going on, Poet Pimp in the building? Good to see you. The next article, this is from U.S. Today. And the title reads, Antibody Tests Can't Confirm If You're Protected Against COVID-19 After Vaccination. Here's why. So, again, we do 2 paragraphs and we're out. This is the news portion. For those who are just coming in, I'm just updating on some news right now, current events and topics. So if y'all have anything that's happened, current event-wise or news, please throw it in the comments. I appreciate y'all's support and y'all's participation as well if y'all got anything. All right. So article reads, people would like to know whether their COVID-19 vaccine is protective enough or previous infection will keep them safe. Experts warned that taking an antibody test isn't a good way to find out. The tests were designed to show whether someone was recently infected with coronavirus, not whether they have enough immune soldiers to prevent an infection. The level of antibodies need to provide protection isn't known. There are nearly 90 different antibody tests on the market, most of which measure something slightly different. So we don't have nothing that is necessarily precise on knowing if you have antibodies or not. All that means it's anyone's guess that what the test actually shows about how protected someone is against COVID-19. Taking the test could give people a false sense of security, health experts say, or a load of unnecessary anxiety. So, these antibody tests is not necessarily the best way to confirm things, since there's 90 different ones that test different things. So we should really focus on rebranding or naming what specifically are you testing when you're looking at it for an antibody test. Like, give it a specific name and not so general, so people won't get it confused. But that's that article. So there is not necessarily on the market, there's 90 plus tests that is not specific and telling you if you have antibodies for COVID-19 or not. So do not get your hopes up. Mostly. There's more in this article. I'm going to stop it right here, of course. And before I move to the next one, let's look into these comments. It said, feeling good. Just got in from a writing session, so I'm pumped. That's what I'm talking about. I haven't written anything lately besides last Wednesday. I ended up writing a song, so that's what's up. I'm glad you got to get some writing in. Writing's very important for sure to get a lot of that going. All right. With that, y'all, let's move to the next article. And in this particular case, this article comes from Business Insider. And the article title reads, Israel's vaccine pass will expire 6 months after the second dose, meaning people will need booster shots to keep going to restaurants and bars. Now, for those of y'all coming in again, this is the news and current events section. So if y'all have anything that is happening right now in the world news-wise and you want to share it, please throw it in the comments and we get to talk about it right now. But right now, this is the news section. So shouts out to y'all. Electric Cruise 2525 in the building. Good to see you. As well as Blue Lotus. Good to see you as well. So, Business Insider. Let's see this article and see what it reads. 2 paragraphs and we're out. So again, Israel's vaccine pass will expire 6 months after the second dose, meaning that people will need to get a booster shot to keep going to restaurants and bars. So there's been this whole talk about boosters and things. So now let's see specifically in Israel, because from the numbers, and I got to share it last episode, that there is at least about 2 million folks that have been vaccinated over in Israel. And that's where they got a lot of data when it comes to the effectiveness of the Pfizer shot that goes over there. So we will see. But let's continue. Israel has a set expiration date on its vaccine pass, which enables access to restaurants and bars. A booster shot received within 5 months of the second dose extends the pass validity for 6 months. So I think I didn't talk about it last week, I may have, but there's also a thing where Joe Biden and Fauci were speaking on having to get booster shots every 5 months, possibly even 3. Don't quote me on it, but there's news articles out there speaking about it due to recent research that's came out and said that as months progressed, the efficacy and the effectiveness of the vaccines wear off. So that's why there's a need for more booster shots. And with the booster shots, it's only particularly right now talking about the ones that have just the 2 shots. So that's Pfizer and Moderna. Thank you for saying that, Electric. It's literally Johnson & Johnson is still just the 1 shot. They are trying to think about doing a booster for it, but again, always double check the information. I don't recall any information on them having a booster shot, but I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised to have a possibility of doing so. But let us continue with this. Israel has already delivered more than 1.9 million boosters, and people aged 12 and over are now eligible. So, these 2 more, and we out. Israel said its vaccine pass, which grants access to non-essential venues like restaurants and bars, now expires 6 months after the second dose of the vaccine. Getting a booster shot 5 months after the second dose resets the clock and extends the eligibility for so-called green pass by another 6 months, Israel's health ministry announced on Sunday. The news comes as Israel rolls out boosters to most of its population. On Sunday, Israel's minister granted access to a 3rd shot to all those over the age of 12 who received the second shot at least 5 months prior. So, from today, the second dose is available to everyone, said Israeli Health Ministry Director General Nachman Ash on Sunday. The Times of Israel reported the pass is also valid within 6 months of recovery from COVID-19, regardless of vaccination status. So there's more information on it. Like I said, we're not going to do all of it, but just know that there's a pass of things out here that after 5 months, close to 6 months, and if you've not gotten a booster shot, this green card, this vaccine pass over there, you will not continue until you get the next booster shot. So that's a whole implementation of things. I know New York has their keys to the city with the Excelsior Pass, which is a UR code. There's already things being done right now. So just take consideration what you're doing and know what needs to end up happening with a lot of this stuff, and just keep updated with this so you know how to move with it, y'all. Now, talking with more booster shots. This article comes from the Washington Examiner. And don't worry, I'll be done with all of this health updated COVID and everything else, and we can be done talking. But Washington Examiner article reads, booster shots could be designed to target Delta variant. So, let's see. 2 paragraphs and we're out. The Biden administration push for COVID-19 booster shots has led to questions about why additional doses wouldn't specifically target the Delta strain now ravaging parts of the country. And again, a lot of this, at least information here with Biden, is talking about in the U.S. So for my folks that are over in different countries, we'll talk about Israel, but anywhere else around the world, whatever local news talks about this for y'all, that's the news that you have for there. But again, this is ravaging, at least here in the U.S., there's information on that. Anyone else frustrated that booster shots will be from the original vaccine? Dr. Michael Mina, an epidemiologist at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, wrote on Twitter, "Why push for a vaccine that is already outdated? If we are going to boost, use a Delta variant of the vaccine. Delta is our baseline now." Interesting. The idea of a Delta variant vaccine booster would be particularly viable because of the mRNA, which y'all, mRNA is the messenger RNA technology used in the Pfizer, Biotechnic, and Moderna vaccines. Such vaccines can be quickly updated or adapted, Mina noted. In fact, Moderna designed its initial mRNA vaccine in about 2 days. So, interesting. But Dr. Larry Corey, professor of vaccine and infectious disease division at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, said it might not be that simple. It sounds good, but if you matched the booster with the variant, it would be better, but the actually has not been proven. Corey said, even against the more resistant variants, it may be that just having more antibodies is all that is required. So, with that, y'all, still back and forth on deciding whether, booster shots will be effective or they will be FDA approved or approved so that they can be used to help with prolonging the effectiveness and the efficacy of prevention, or really just more so protection against not only the Delta variant, but the virus itself. So, we will see, y'all. But that's the next one. Now, with talking again, we're still continuing with these booster shots. This article comes from NPR, and this specifically is talking about, again, we saying earlier, Moderna. Article reads, Moderna has asked the FDA to approve, or I should say, to authorize a booster of its COVID-19 vaccine. So there's a difference between approval, FDA approved, and it being authorized. So that whole thing about the EUA, which is the emergency use authorization, versus the full FDA approval of a product or a drug. So in this case, it's to authorize a booster shot. So let's see. 2 paragraphs, we're out. Article reads, a third dose of Moderna vaccine given 6 months after the initial 2 doses significantly boosts immunity, according to data the company submitted to the Food and Drug Administration on Wednesday. The data comes from 344 volunteers who got an additional dose of the vaccine as a part of a clinical study. So right now, we're still in a lot of clinical studies with figuring this stuff out. Still, antibodies had waned significantly 6 months after the vaccination, the company said, but the third shot boosted antibodies to an even higher point than was seen after initial shots, even though the boosters was just half of the original dose. So, with Moderna, it seems like it's not the same full dose, it's only half. Let's continue. The increased protection was achieved across age groups, notably in older adults ages 65 and above, the company said. Moderna made the announcement in a press release, but the research has not yet been peer reviewed. So this is all information just coming out, but it has not been reviewed. Pfizer has also asked for authorization for a booster shot of its dose of the vaccine. The FDA is scheduling a meeting on September 17th to discuss the needs for boosters for the general public. And we're going to leave it there. So there's more on that again. I got this from NPR News, and title is Moderna has asked the FDA to authorize a booster of its COVID-19 vaccine. So we'll see somewhere towards the middle of September, if not towards the end of September, more talk whether if things will be approved or they will not when it comes to, or not approved, but authorized for the booster shots, and you'll start hearing more and more of that in the world. But with that, on to the next. We got 2 more regarding health again, and then we'll be done and out, y'all. So next thing we got, this one is talking about the numbers, because we're talking about, okay, numbers are surging here and there. Now how are we keeping track of that? So another article that comes from NPR, headline reads, millions of people are missing from CDC COVID data as states fail to report cases. So these numbers are all over the place because we're not getting exact numbers. And I get it. That's definitely pretty hard to get, especially with a high population, and then figuring out the specifics of this person has this symptoms, if they have this, if it's confirmed, and then who's reporting, where do you get all the numbers, who's putting it all together. So it gets very convoluted and confusing, or really hard. But let's see what this article says. Boom. Article reads, colorful maps on the new online health equity tracker reveal how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected different races and age groups across the U.S., but you can tell something is not quite right. A handful of states are grayed out, and that's not because they escaped the pandemic. There's no data coming out of Texas, points out a software engineer, Josh Zambarbi, me and these names, of Atlanta's Morehouse School of Medicine, which recently rolled out the tracking portal. A lot of Americans should be unhappy about that, because they should say, wow, like, we need the data, right? Because we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle here. And it's just not a search for jigsaw pieces for Texas. The Center of Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has tallied over 39 million cases of COVID in the U.S. But if you want to be more detailed about this information, such as where the patients live, where the patients are hospitalized or died, demographic details like race, gender, and age, that information is gathered separately. All right, see, now that makes sense. So you get a full tally of how much is in the U.S., but all the specifics, you have to figure that out because it's gathered separately. Interesting. There might be extra loops of information being plugged in a whole, I don't want to say inflation, but a big arranging of numbers. So we will see. But I will stop here. But I just wanted to give note to that even with all of this sparking and stuff going on, and being able to give tallies and numbers of what's rising, especially in the U.S. when it comes to numbers, they're having a difficult time trying to keep up with giving numbers, especially specifically to see where in each state and how high things are. At this point, there is a lot of more guesstimating due to higher populations, as well as in various areas and counties, but not having specific data gathered, if not being sent out. So I don't know all the loops and all of the connections for people to get all this stuff, but just wanted to share that they're having a difficult time of reporting, cases in different states. But with that, y'all, the next one that I found interesting, and the homies and us spoke about this too, and was waiting for things like this to happen. This article here speaks on that. So this article comes from, again, NPR, and the title reads, "Fake vaccination cards were sold to healthcare workers on Instagram." I knew this would end up coming and happening. There's too much details. There's too much pushing to the point where I knew that this would come up. I mean, we have fake IDs for folks when they wanted to get into the club, all these other different places when you were underage. So I'm not surprised forging of any other type of documents to get places, and you can make profit off of that. So we'll see what this is about. 2 paragraphs and we are out. Boom. New York. A New Jersey woman calling herself the anti-vax mama, and I already seen this. I watched a news report on this. on Instagram sold several hundred fake COVID-19 vaccination cards at $200 a pop to New York City area jab dodgers. Look at these uses of words, including people working in hospitals and nursing homes, prosecutors said Tuesday. For an extra $250, a second scammer would then enter a bogus card buyer's name into a New York State vaccination database, which feeds systems used to verify vaccine status at places they're required, such as concerts, sporting events, prosecutors said. The person's name, Jasmine Clifford, of Lyndhurst, New Jersey, there's all the information out there, was charged Tuesday with offering a false instrument, criminal possession of a forged instrument, and conspiracy. Authorities say she sold about 250 fake vaccine cards in recent months. Her co-conspirator, Nadasia, might be saying that completely wrong, Barkley of Bellport, Long Island, again, all information out there, did not enter a plea and an arraignment Tuesday morning in Manhattan criminal court on charges of offering a false instrument and conspiracy. So y'all, man, it's getting hectic out here that folks is literally forging fake COVID cards so that they can continue working where they are working, because in certain places in healthcare, if you work for the county or state, I know specifically in California, if you do work for either the county, state, health officials, and now especially in LAUSD as a teacher and staff, you have to have a shot, or if you do not get it by then, you will be out of a job. Just how it ends up going. In some places, they're charging on top of that, so taking bits away from your salary. So I'm not surprised this was an option people are going to start going with. But again, you play games like this, you end up with other prizes that you did not want to get in the first place. So just be careful with all of whatever decisions and stuff that you make. No shortcuts, because honestly, that's almost like fast money. Making fast money, man, you have a higher risk of more things going wrong rather than trying to go straight and just hustle out hard and do what you need to. So think, y'all. Right. Got 3 more, and then we're done, and we'll move on to the next topic. I thought it was interesting. I just wanted to note this one. I'm not going to read this one in particular, but for those folks, especially in New York, we're talking about the eviction moratorium and how that's been up due to what's already starting to run out. I know in September, so like in the next 3 days, I know here in California, or it might have already started happening, but as well as unemployment. This article comes from Daily News, and specifically again in New York. It says New York lawmakers extend eviction moratorium through January 15th as COVID resurges. So just wanted to note that those folks who have not been able to pay rent, especially in New York due to what's going on with the pandemic, and were worrying and rushing with anxiety to figure out if they're going to extend or if it's going to have to be out on, the streets due to all this going on, they have now up to January 15th. I'm not going to go in, like I said, and read into it. Just wanted to give y'all that update there. Now, quick update of what's going on in Afghanistan. But this article comes from NPR, and the title reads, several California public school students are still trapped in Afghanistan. Very interesting. So, the U.S. ended its massive evacuations out of Kabul, Afghanistan by President Biden's August 31st deadline, but as many as 27 California public school students still remain in Afghanistan. The students, whose grades range from elementary to high school, are from the 19 families of the San Juan Unified School District in Sacramento. Most of the students, the school district says, have family members with them. The Sacramento area is home to one of the United States' largest Afghan American communities. That's something new for me. Didn't know. How these students will be able to return to the U.S. in a now Taliban-controlled Afghanistan is unclear. These numbers continue to change rapidly. We believe that there are some of these families may be in transit out of Afghanistan, as we have not been able to reach many of them in the last few days. Raz Rai, the district director of communications, told NPR in a statement. So we still have some folks out in Afghanistan, especially from the school district, that we've already pulled and left out of Afghanistan, but they're still within Afghanistan. So we don't know what those updates will be, if they're still there or if they're in transit. But I just wanted to update on that situation. So just give y'all a little bit more after the date that's been happening. Now, last thing, for those folks who are looking and sharing information on social media pertaining to pandemic and things and stuff going on, you might want to be mindful of what you're sharing and putting out there, because according to CNN News, the article states, for misinformation peddlers on social media, it's a 3 strikes and you're out, or 5, maybe more. 2 paragraphs and we're out. So, when Twitter suspended Marjorie Taylor Greene for a week last month for posting misinformation about COVID-19 vaccines, it may have sparked some deja vu. The Republican congresswoman from Georgia has been kicked off the platform for 12 hours for the same violation just 3 weeks earlier. And 6 months before that, she was briefly suspended for sharing conspiracy theories about the Senate runoff elections in Georgia. Greene wasn't the only political figure taking a forced social media hiatus recently. YouTube suspended Senator Rand Paul the same week for posting false claims about COVID-19, triggering the first strike of the video sharing platform's misinformation policy. Paul and Greene each claim the platform has violated their freedoms of speech. However, speech laws don't apply to private companies. YouTube, private company. But, just as an update, y'all, this is letting you know, a lot of sensories going on. So whatever you're sharing, and if it's not in line with being factual and backed up, as well as the narrative of what's being said in the news and things, and it counters that in a way where it is seen to not only go against it, but it seems far-fetched by the news, don't be surprised if you start getting strikes. I know YouTube has definitely been cutting down on some of that stuff, maybe some of the things that not only myself but other people have been saying too. So there's the algorithm and watching words and things that need to be deleted out of speech. But just know, putting misinformation out, especially right now about pandemic, don't be surprised if you get yourself suspended off of any of the accounts, especially Twitter and YouTube at this point right now. But that's all I have for news, y'all. If y'all have anything else, please put them in the comments. Let me know how y'all feeling, how y'all doing as we continue with the show. But with that, y'all, let's go ahead and let's get into the next topic. I know y'all was already waiting, so I appreciate y'all for being with me still here with the news, but we are done with it. Now, next topic we're going to be talking about is daydreaming. Now, when y'all hear daydreaming, let me know, what are the first few words that you think of when you hear daydreaming? Put them down in the comments. I'm also talking to y'all too, after that's watching this too, on Instagram or YouTube. Put down what you think in the comments when you hear the word daydream or daydreaming. And like I usually do when we're doing that, so as y'all are doing that, I got to get some baselines, again, with some definitions. So I'm going to give us a few. One being from, of course, Webster's. And then the other one I'm going to be using from the Free Dictionary. So, when it comes to daydream, first definition we have in here is a pleasant, visionary, usually wishful creation of the imagination. Another one, it says to have a daydream. Using the word to explain the word, again, makes it difficult. But that one is from Webster's. Now, with the Free Dictionary, the definition we have, and it's a noun. I got to start doing this now. This one's particular is a noun. It's a dream-like musing or fantasy while awake, especially of the fulfillment of wishes or hopes. Second one, it's a verb. To have dream-like musings or fantasies while awake. So, now that we have some background to what daydreaming is, y'all, what do we want to specifically talk when it comes to daydreaming? Well, I don't know if any of y'all have, but I have a really good feeling that a lot of us have definitely had moments and times where we've daydreamed, where we are literally somewhere, either in school, at a job, running an errand, washing dishes, whatever it may have been being, and you take a moment to just let your mind wander in thought and figure out what and where and what's going on. Now, when we're thinking about that in those certain suches, a question I would like to ask because of that, and there's some data on this when it comes to daydreaming and the certain amount of how much time that we do this. Main question is, why do we daydream? So like, what does it not only necessarily mean to daydream? So we already got the definition, but why do we do it? Now, with me answering why we do it, there's a few different numbers that come up that I've looked up when I was looking into this, because I only knew daydream just, again, surface level of things and stuff, as well as different songs. Shout out to A.D.V.I.S.S and Jill Scott. Daydreaming or Daydream, bruh, that song is dope. But roughly between 30% to 50%, and specifically I've seen 46.9% and 47% of us be daydreaming throughout the day. That's a very interesting number. Almost close to 50% of the time we're daydreaming. So in that particular case, that percentage, why do we daydream? Well, when I think about it and I daydream about it, usually when you find yourself daydreaming, you find yourself in a place or a state, either if you're working very hard or if something is not really engaging you, whether you're bored, you daydream. You're in class, you may not like the subject, and you just start to wander off and you begin to daydream. And what that ends up doing when you daydream, it not only sets you up in a different place and space, but at that time, what it does is that it's also taking you to a place to either thinking about your next moves, your goals, what you might be eating in the future. If you're still in class and it's about to be lunchtime, and you daydreaming about what the lunch you're about to end up having, but it's something that's moving you towards, like it was say earlier, a wishful, or if not, something that is usually of your hopes, something that really just grabs your attention. So We daydream for a few reasons. One of the main reasons that I agree with when we daydream is we daydream to help us feel less anxious and stressed. Now, when you think about how you feel less anxious and stressed when you daydream, well, when you're engaged in an activity or you're engaged in something and you're really hyper focused and you're starting to feel the anxiety and stress of you not getting that done there, daydreaming acts as if a temporary break and pause from that activity to help lower anxiety and stress about the activity, because you're not focusing on that point and you're giving yourself time to think, which leads to my second point of why we daydream. Also, unknowingly, when we daydream, it also helps us to come up with problems and solutions to that said activity or any other issues that we may have beyond that. So what I mean by that is, when you're daydreaming, you are literally, at times when you get away from something and it's too hard, you unknowingly are starting to try to think up, okay, well, I've been sitting here with this problem for almost 10-15 minutes now and I still can't figure it out. And then you just take your time to really start daydreaming, almost as if you're taking a break away, mental break away from what it is. And you're starting to just look off into space and you just start really wondering, moves and things, that it gets to a point where you're just like, yo, I was doing it from this part of the problem and I didn't look on this side of doing the problem. When I get back to it, let me try that. And it happens again. It just happens just randomly as you're daydreaming, because it's depending on where you take your space and mind at that time. You find something that's pleasurable, which also heightens not only your excitement, but your energy to really get back to what you were doing, especially if it was something, again, that is very pleasurable and it grabs your attention. Now, adding on top of that, of not only that it helps to lower the anxiety and the stress, and also it helps to come up with solutions and problems. Another thing with daydreaming of what and why we do it is we use it to also help boost our visualization skills. And what I mean by visualization skills is being able, again, our hopes and dreams, to see what that would look like. And a lot of not only successful, but actors, athletes, and professionals use visualization, which in a sense is very close, again, to daydreaming. There's other names. You can say mind wandering. And again, like I said, you also have visualization, because you're imagining things. It heightens that imagination. It gives you a course of action for you to kind of do trial and error of you trying either a trick, if it's skateboarding, you trying a shot in your head, which is basketball, which sometimes people usually definitely say to be able to visualize yourself doing the action and following through with that action, so that you can have a better grasp of when you use it and do it in the present moment, when that comes and it happens. So even though our mind could wander and move off to a different place, if you're able to really focus in and use it, your daydreaming can be used to help boost your visualization, as well as the other one is to be able to boost your imagination skills, which goes into your creativity. So with wandering thoughts or daydreaming, you might come up with a really crazy, not crazy, but a really odd idea that you never thought of, and you was like, bro, that's pretty dope. Let me write that down. That's not only just the brainstorming part of you, but when you start to look off into your goals and try to just imagine things happening, you just come up with an idea and you start writing it down. That's why folks not only take that time, like just to get away from something that's not necessarily helping and is causing more of that stress and anxiety. And when they wander and let their mind wander, their mind's wandering. They're coming up with ideas that's just coming from out of nowhere. So it just pops up and boom, more things for your creativity. So why do we daydream? We daydream for the number of those things. Whether it's to help lower our anxiety and our stress at that moment, whatever activity is. 2 is to help, strengthen our visualization skills, as well as 3, to strengthen our imagination skills, which helps strengthen our creativity. Awesome. Now, we already got to talk about how often, at least. It says 50% of the time. I don't know necessarily if that's always going to be on the day, but close to it. 30 to 50% of the time that you're daydreaming. And that can be for a split second, all the way up to almost... Honestly, I don't know if I don't think you could daydream for a whole hour. This possibility, but most of the time when you're daydreaming, I see it in spurts, and this is just a personal number for me. I see it in spurts of either, like I said, in split seconds, maybe up to like 2 minutes when it comes to daydreaming. I don't necessarily see it for that whole long of an hour, but let's see. What's going on, Kundan? Good to see you in here. What's the word? Yeah, I've already just been going on my spiel about daydreaming, and I got to talk about a bit of what it is, as well as why do we daydream. So just a recap for y'all, and what's going on, that your girl. Good to see you in here. But with daydreaming, I got to talk about it already, but why we daydream for a number of reasons. One is to also help to it helps to not only lower our anxiety, but also the stress of getting away from a moment, as well as to help with improving our visualization skills, our imagination, which then leads to also improving on our creativity. And that's used by a lot of athletes, a lot of artists, a lot of professionals, as well as just a whole spectrum of people when it comes to daydreaming. Yes, we may see it as an act of like your mind's wandering, so you may not be fully paying attention or investing the time and stuff into this. So you never know if that is going to end up being the case when it comes to that, but we'll get into the pros and cons. But that's all that's going on right now with y'all. It's like I'm just figuring that out as we go. Now let's see. Over here, saying, how do you handle bullying? Now that's a whole nother different thing. But I appreciate that question. It depends on what type of bullying you're talking about. Are we talking about cyberbullying? Because we've talked about that before. Or if you're talking about in-person bullying. I mean, you gotta give me a little bit more specifics. And what's going on? This is Christina. Yeah, I gotta be able to see your face. It's been a while, but I appreciate it, Christina. Appreciate it. Now, we went from giving information about what it is, why we daydream, where I would end up saying like where the most times have y'all daydreamed, like as in where have you caught yourself slipping in wandering thoughts when it comes to daydreaming. For myself, most of the time that I've caught myself daydreaming, for a lot of us, maybe possibly it was school. I know for me at times when it came to certain subjects and certain teachers in school that I didn't necessarily enjoy or have joy going to the classes, I would catch myself in moments of times of just wandering off in thought, just due to the fact that literally, I don't know what necessarily was going on in class because I didn't necessarily have a connection to the information as well as the teacher. So I didn't really push forward with wanting to do and learning anything in that particular case because of just the disconnect. So I used the daydreaming at times. Like I said, it's not like I was fully disengaged. There's times where I come in and out between that, to just find myself to literally just keeping my mind engaged and stimulated when it came to school. But yeah, let me see what y'all got going on in here. It said I need someone to talk to. Got you. On this particular case, I mean, anybody's more than welcome to come on the show. I just say when you do, just when it comes to that, this will be on YouTube. So if you do not want to be on YouTube, then it's okay. You don't have to join on the camera. But just wanted to give that disclaimer that if you do join on the camera, this is being uploaded on YouTube as well as it's on Instagram. So if you want to, you want to. We said, have you finished current events? Yes, I did. Kundan already got to finish this, and let's see what you got. It says, what do you think is the relationship between flow and daydreaming? Beautiful. I like that you put that in here. So let me get you up in here. Let's talk about this. And if y'all don't know, Kundan is a regular on What's the Word Wednesdays, and it's always appreciated with the information that Kundan brings.
Hello.
So let's get this going, y'all. Oh yeah.
Always
Let
love
me
with
X
this
you out.
one.
Let me X you out. Hold on.
You're
Let me
cut off
X you
again.
out real quick.
You're like
Yep,
halfway again.
exactly. This is annoying. Instagram, you gotta fix this. Y'all gotta fix this. Y'all gotta fix this. Like when I try to add people, I don't want my head going all the way up here. So that was a funny booper, y'all. But all right, let me get Kundan back in here real quick. And shouts out to Cuzzo in the building, Prolific Hands, y'all. If y'all don't know, please go check out Prolific Hands. Also has an art page, but as well as one of the dopest individuals I know, and he got hands. So that's why he got Prolific Hands. So be ready. Um, but how you doing, Kundan? What's the word? Good to see you. I'm glad that
Hello.
you're here. And now my head's not cut off. I keep on forgetting now
Hello.
that it just doesn't transition, but it's all good. But I like your question that you gave. So I wanted you to come in and just go ahead if you wanted to answer your question that you put there, or if you wanted me to answer the question. But
Mhm.
it's a very good one pertaining
Mhm.
to the difference between flow and daydreaming, because I was kind of already not hinting at the similarities, but daydreaming in itself, it has different terms to be used. Daydreaming was coined by a particular person. I forgot his name. I mean, it's a white dude. That's all I'm end up saying. But it's a coined term. So there's multiple different ways to mention this. But if you want, Kunde, you can go ahead.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm just curious because lately I've been doing this daily practice of basically just resting in my creativity. And
Mm,
so, so I do this, 40-day sadhana, which is like a Hindu practice of doing something daily for 40 days, like a 40-day dedication to a practice. And I've
mm.
been like, I'm on my third round, and I keep adding another layer, which is one on the third round.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
so right now, but it's still about like just resting in my creativity. And so first we have to define what rest even means, right? Because when I say the word rest, in my experience, at least, a lot of people picture like somebody sleeping or meditating
Yeah.
or just sitting still, right? And if I advise you to rest all day, then you would picture somebody sleeping all day, right? But it's not
Mm.
necessarily so. To me, rest is whatever restores and rejuvenates you. So that means if
Okay.
I run around the park with my arms underneath and saying, woohoo, that could be restful. But rest
Mm.
is like whatever is restful for you and it's unique to you, right? And you have to
Yeah.
find like what is optimum rest for you besides sleep, right? Your daytime rest basically.
Hmm.
And so creativity is one way where creativity as rest and creativity for rest. So
Yeah.
you're resting in your creativity means you don't give yourself the pressure to monetize it. You don't give in to that capitalist pleasure. In fact, you
Yeah.
don't even give in to like creativity with a goal or an aim, creativity without a purpose.
Mm,
Uh, in fact, Anna Akana has also talked about it in one of her videos where, for example, you know, she would often, you know, release a single per month and it would eventually become an album. And that's how a lot of artists do nowadays, right? But
yeah.
sometimes she would just release a one-off animated short that's like 3 minutes and it's not supposed to become anything. It's just it on its own. You know,
Hmm.
it doesn't have like a becoming or a purpose beyond its own existence. So similarly, I do like I haven't been writing in over a month, and I'm okay with that because I'm multi-creative, but also because I'm just resting in my creativity where I just doodle every morning and I dance every morning. And
Mm,
those doodles I know will probably never become a book, never become an exhibition. It will have no goal or purpose beyond its own existence, you know.
yeah. As if it's becoming part of not only not like the daily ritual, but just a way, like you said, you're resting in it. It's bringing you some type of energy and connection to whatever the activity is, and it doesn't have to be something bigger out there where it's going to produce some
Mhm.
type of results and stuff out there. I feel that.
Right. And it's also art as a verb, not just as a noun, because like I mentioned a few weeks ago, where when I'm when I doodle, like I with the color pencils is what I do. I just shade over the same shapes over and over again. And
Okay.
so what that means that it's complete at every stage
Yeah.
and it's never like completely finished. I can keep going. At the same time, I don't feel any ache or incompletion, you know. Like I feel
Mm,
complete when I'm going. And that's the beauty of it. To me, that's the common ground between daydreaming, flow, and just resting in your creativity. Because I
yes.
feel like it's almost like an active daydreaming where instead of just passively sitting and letting my mind wander,
Yes.
I'm doing something with my physical body, almost like a physical daydreaming, you know.
Mm, mm, got you. Yeah. Um. Now, since we're back into that, and shouts out to again, got prolific hands in here as well as the brother Chairman Dallas in the building as well too. So now going back to your point about talking about how daydreaming is very close to, if not, how is that the difference between daydreaming and flow? Um, I feel they are components, almost as if they're like if it's a step, like
Hmm.
in they're intertwining each other, because flow is that state where you're really locked in and focused on a particular activity.
Hmm.
I know that, or I should say, I think that daydreaming is almost that precursor before you get into flow. So you may start, it's almost if it's a way to help start energizing yourself to come up with ideas to be like, okay, when I lock in, when I start doing this song or working on this particular piece or getting myself ready for this track meet, like let me just let my mind just chill and wander and other stuff. And then when your mind begins to wander, if you're using that intention, it'll help you towards coming up with a solution or a problem to what you're about to get into your activity with. So when you're right into your
Hmm.
activity, now you've already kind of prepped yourself to get ready to really utilize and be in that flow state even more, because of the fact that that daydreaming gave you time to not only ease your your stressors and your anxiety towards the activity, because the activity may make you feel happy. It may have you feeling a little uptight and not unaware, what not unaware, but not necessarily confident what you're about to do with it. It might be that case, but what daydreaming can do, because there's also not being able to daydream about the particularly right thing too, that again it sets you up to get not only motivation but energy and ideas to push toward when you're in that state of flow.
Hmm.
So that's how I see it, as like they
Yeah,
they
and
really interrelate with each other.
yeah, that's why I feel like I see flow as almost like at that active daydreaming because flow doesn't necessarily have a goal, but it does have a direction. But the
Mm-hmm.
irony is in the beginning, it starts with no direction even. It starts with the daydreaming. And then
Mm.
that daydream frees you up from being locked up. It's interesting you use the word locked in,
Yeah.
but first you have to free yourself from being locked up.
Yeah.
And then once you open and then your awareness is expanded, then you do like a slight playful nudge here and here and here and here, almost like uh, putting a dance on the banks of a river,
Mm.
and you, but a very light one, right?
Yeah.
Very light, playful one, and eventually, like that daydreaming starts to have a direction, right?
Yeah.
A focus, and that's when you lock in, like you said. But
Yes.
uh, it's not like the previous being locked up. When being locked in, you still feel free inside, ironically, even though you're giving yourself a direction and a structure.
Yeah.
And so you're still daydreaming, but this time you have given parameters to your daydreaming.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
structure.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. All right. I have a random question that goes along with this,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, it's just this will be a little fun part. Can you daydream at night?
Yeah, probably. Maybe your night dreams are actually daydream, maybe.
I'm just because of the name itself is daydream, so you would think it's throughout the day that your dream, that you will be having or letting your mind wander. I know, especially some people at night, that's where some of them are the most creative. So I was
Yeah,
just
the
being
night owls,
goofy.
yeah.
Yes, just be
There are
goofy in a
people who
sense
are
because of
night
the
owls
name.
literally because they feel more like secure and safe and peaceful at night, precisely because everyone else is sleeping.
Yeah.
That's why they're more creative during that time.
Yes. Now for those I know who were here and wasn't be here before, yes, cuz I had to ask that question just because again, words are powerful, man. Words they have so much content and spells in them. So I just had to ask cuz there's a day quail and there's a night quail. So do you have a daydream and a night dream? I mean, of course, but just had to at least put it out there. Um for those coming in here, we're talking about daydreaming right now. I mean, we're not daydreaming.
Mhm.
Hopefully, I mean, if even if a mind wanders, it is what it is, and it is what you make of it. But basically, we were talking about earlier about how closely tied daydreaming is with the flow state, and what those
Mhm.
really are. As in, one of them is the precursor, almost the catalyst. I say catalyst is the thing that almost ends up driving you right going into the flow state because it happens prior. But now next I already talked about why we daydream, but I want to get your perspective on it because I know you just came in, but I had a few already before, but I want to know from you, why do we daydream? What is the purpose for
Mhm.
us to daydream? And I'm gonna have to close this window because now I got a lot of bugs flying in here with me. They trying to daydream too. I'm just playing.
Mhm.
But why do you think we daydream? This is for anybody in the comments as well too. Why do we daydream?
Mhm. I think it just frees up our minds from the systemic conditioning that
Mm,
helps us feel like imprisoned inside these social constructs.
mm,
And I think that's all similar to why we feel bored. I think we start daydreaming when we are bored. And then, but that's why boredom can be a good thing,
yes.
where we, like, it's too bad that some people like would try to distract from their boredom by picking up their phone or whatever. But
Yeah.
if they really lean into the boredom and just sit with it, they might actually um, start daydreaming.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
and then
No,
they
I
might get,
yes.
unexpected, inspired ideas or solutions to some problems that they had been thinking about. Uh, the irony is, if you keep thinking about your problem, you might not be able to solve it because you're giving yourself too much stress.
Yes.
It's like the whole the tip of the tongue phenomenon, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you when you when you have a word that's on the tip of your tongue and you try to force yourself to remember and you don't remember it, but then you
Mm-hmm.
forget about it and like a few hours later it suddenly like shows up, the word shows
Yep.
up. Similarly, like with problem solving, it's like that where, and I think that's why daydreaming is important too, because the solutions to our problems sometimes or maybe even often comes when we're not directly thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. I definitely agree. Because example of that, especially at least the tip of the iceberg phenomenon, is me and a brother was reminiscing about high school, and we were talking about different teachers that we had in high school. And there's a particular teacher that I was trying to tell him about that was my English teacher, and he had a different English teacher, and he was going down all the name of the teachers, and I was like, no, it's not that one. No, it's not that one. Like, I know his name started with a P or something. I don't remember. And this is while I was going and taking a walk because I was getting away from something else. Tell me why, hours later, after I come back, I'm like, that's the teacher's name. And it was after the fact
Mhm.
because I was in that moment really trying to figure it out while I'm on the phone with him, and we're really just like, yo, I don't remember. But then literally when I stopped thinking about it and my mind just went off at one random moment, and it was just like, that's the teacher's name. Now I remember it. So
Mhm.
I definitely feel you
Exactly.
on that when it comes to the more you putting the more stress on something, and it makes it even tougher for you to even come up with a solution until literally you let that go, and it'll just come automatically to you almost as effortlessly.
Yeah. That's why some people have even like learned how to systematize this, and there are many versions of it. One version is this guy wrote a book called The MacGyver Secret. He's literally the guy who wrote the MacGyver Secret.
Mm,
Uh, and even how he came up with each new episode because he always had the pressure of a deadline, right? Because it was, I think, like a weekly show. Was it? Even I think like a weekly,
hmm,
it was definitely weekly. I think. So he had the pressure of the deadline. And basically, what he would do is, and
yeah,
I found this sometimes, he would write whenever he's stuck on finishing an episode, he would write a question related
yeah.
to the problem related to his the episode. It might even be as simple as like, how do I finish this episode, right? And then he would leave it. He would take a shower or he would take a walk for half an hour, do something physical that help his mind get off the problem. Uh,
Mm,
And so his subconscious mind would take over and work on solving the problem. As we know, the subconscious mind is bigger, right?
yeah.
And so what would often happen is by the time he comes back and he picks up the pen again, and he would just start writing, and the answers would just flow.
Mm. Hmm. So, y'all, it can be used to definitely help with coming
Mm-hmm.
up and having solutions. Now, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
switch to it because there's always a staple question for me to always try to go and break down. Now, we thinking about daydreaming because we've been given a lot more of like where it can improve and help. Now, let's talk about the pros and cons when it comes to daydreaming. Um, let's go ahead and let's start off first with some cons. What are some cons to daydreaming?
I think the irony is that the con is because of the pro in a way. At least one of the cons is because of the pro because um, well, two ways, right? One is just being overwhelmed, like just inundated with ideas, and you don't know like which one to choose or pick or focus on.
Yeah,
And related to that is also just there's a lot of ungrounded people who like uh you know they never execute anything. They have too many ideas. They don't. finished,
Mm,
right? They don't, they don't start anything, or maybe they start some a lot of things, but they never finish most of them, you know.
mm,
And I think that's a big part of too much daydreaming.
mm. I
And
feel you
then
in that.
on the darker side, on the dangerous side, might, if you take this all the way,
Yeah.
if you are just in your head, or your head in the clouds all the time, then you could end up becoming delusional or even psychotic, right? If you take it all the way.
Mm, mm. You're almost hinting at one of the cons for the next topic under because again, I do these topics. If y'all don't know, I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
saying it. I put these topics together on purpose because they connect in some way, shape, or form. But yes, not. I agree with you when it comes to those cons within the pros and things that he's mixing is almost the spectrum. Like it's an
Mhm.
overabundance and then sometimes it's an underabundance of something.
Mhm.
Um, but I would definitely agree with you that a con being that you can definitely overwhelm yourself with so many options and ideas because you're just letting your head go. Um, Another con, um, that if going to an extreme, you become not only avoidant, you become avoidant of what you're trying to face. So you really start to not want to face problems and solutions when you really
Mhm.
get into daydreaming. You use it again as an escape to get away from things. There's of course a healthy amount of being able to, escape for a quick second to get and
Mhm.
recollect yourself, but doing it on a regular basis for too much longer of a time, that can grow into, fur longer, whether if it's avoidance, disorder, all these other different things that come along with it of over thinking it to escape from some particular problem, situation, or place. It's a con. Um, Another con of daydreaming as well, which is a counter, which is like you were saying earlier, is in certain points you have the inability to focus, which people gauge that as ADHD at certain times for kids, whether if it is, mostly a lot of boys being diagnosed with that at a very young age because of all of that extra energy. But daydreaming can lead to having those particular things happening to them as well. You back with us?
Yeah, I think I didn't hear the last part you said.
Yeah.
You were-
I was saying that that it can also contradict with, it's saying it helping in some ways to focus. In this particular case, you're unable to
Mhm.
because of the fact that you went off somewhere else with it. And I said that that would connect with, you know, ADHD
Yeah.
because of the fact that those are part of some of those behaviors that are seen that,
Mhm.
could be a con, but that, is not always necessarily the case. Again, when we come up with a lot of this stuff, it's not necessarily just only one indicator. There's multiple variables and things that come together to make it even more of an issue. It's just not only just one thing at times. But that's another con. I don't know if you have any other cons that for at least
Yeah.
daydreaming.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
Um,
So I don't know much about ADHD, but it's possible that daydreaming could contribute to that. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
And I'll say another con, which can also be on the flip side when you flip it, is your intention when it comes to daydreaming can be a con. So if you're daydreaming and whatever you're daydreaming about is something that's producing a negative
Negativity. Negative.
thought or negative
Mhm.
outcome of things, it will not necessarily be the best for you to be doing that with.
Mhm.
So that can also in itself be a con if you daydream about something negative
Oh yeah. Yeah,
because we know
that's
how powerful the mind is.
mhm. Yeah, and that makes me wonder about, again, I don't know much about, the actual condition, but
Yes.
like bipolar disorder, where people are
Mm,
either manic or depressed, meaning they're either very, very like unreasonably like really high, energetic and happy, or they're like uh very, very like depressed, like like depressed not in the way the culture thinks, but like literally
yeah.
like they can't get out of bed, they can't move, they can't eat, that level of right
Yeah.
depression.
There's a
That's like
hyper and there's a
mm,
hypo, and
right.
there's a spectrum. I actually have the
They swing back
DSM.
and forth between the two, right?
Yes. There's I have the DSM. Well, for those who don't know who the DSM is I have the DSM-5 because it's fifth edition. But the DSM is the if I'm right, it's the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual for Mental Disorders. So they have a whole set of different, not only symptoms but identifiers and behaviors for each one of these different disorders. And I know,
Mm,
again, for we're just saying for bipolar in particular, like there is a spectrum. We already, of course, we know for a
mm,
lot of stuff there's a spectrum,
yeah,
but there's
yeah,
different parts within that spectrum. Almost like I think if I can be wrong, y'all can get me on this because I know there's a bipolar type 1 and a bipolar 2. So this
oh
on
yeah,
basically it's on a plane or a quadrant. So they break it up into four different quadrants, and depending on where you can go from that. So they have the, like I said, the hyper and the hypo, and you either show manic, which is having a lot of that energy, like you said, and then you have the depressive, points. But there's a whole curve that shows you the progression of whether if you'll be more manic depressive or you'll be more hypo or whatever it is, depending on your baseline. So
hmm
there's a lot more into it, but
yeah.
let's look for that.
On Amazon Prime, Modern Love season one, there is an episode of a bipolar woman and her dating life,
Mm.
and a lot of the episodes are based on true stories, and based
Hmm.
on like I think the original Modern Love column in I think the New York Times, I think, or the Washington Post, one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really helped me understand because it really humanized it. Uh, of course, I'm not bipolar, so bipolar people might disagree. I haven't asked them, but
Yes.
it does it did give me a bit more empathy about how it works and things like that. Um, where because when she was in a manic uh, episode, you can't even tell that she's not. She just felt looks like a very positive, upbeat, happy person, and she would be confident, assertive. She would ask the guy out, they would
Yeah.
have great dates, and then, but once she went into the depressed episode, she like she was too scared to tell her that this was her condition, so she would just, drive him away, drive every guy away, tell them to leave. But anyway, the reason why I brought it up is because I feel like daydreaming, because daydreaming on the negative side is what you were saying,
Yeah.
right? Again,
Mm-hmm.
if you take it to the
What's up,
extreme,
Devin?
daydreaming on the positive side can make you like manic, and then on the negative side can make you like go into the depressed side.
Mm. Yeah. So I mean, that's another aspect he's talking about with a con when it comes to daydreaming is that depending on your intention with it too, you can have those negative and kind of defeating thoughts. So just being careful of that. Now let's go ahead and let's flip to the pros. We already talking about some already before, but let's speak to some pros. Mm. We losing you. We losing you. Come back. We losing you in here. Let's see, y'all. But yeah, y'all. So still continuing the convo around at least daydreaming right now. We're talking into the pros and cons. Now he's about to flip it over into the pros of daydreaming, and wanted to see what brother had or Kundan had to add. But we'll wait a little bit, y'all. But with, at least for me, when it comes to cons, or not cons, but the pros of daydreaming, one of them, of course, is being able to help yourself problem solve. We've already were speaking on it earlier, but being able to take time to just move away from a situation and come up with ideas to help yourself with that exclusive situation that you have, that daydreaming can bring with that. So we back,
Yeah, I was saying
moving
with
slow
that.
mo.
I was saying we all kind of already talked about the pros, like their problem solving. It helps you with
Mm-hmm.
problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
That. Mm-hmm.
And then in the, as well as daydreaming can also help with creativity. I spoken on that earlier as well too. We were saying that with creativity, great with visualization, as well as being able
Mm-hmm.
to have expand your imagination when it comes to things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know most of the time when you do daydream, that's usually where you take your mind in places too. Not like you almost dreaming of like you being in a fantasy land where you are, but it's something that's really engaging you to think about either a future, your goals,
Mm-hmm.
as well as just something that really, really grabs your attention and you're just focusing on that particular thing. And again,
Yeah,
if
in
it's
fact, I'm just reminded, like somebody came up with something called flow dreaming,
hmm,
where since we were talking about flow, flow dreaming is basically just a kind of hypnosis or guided visualization, but instead of like the induction like that would normally start with hypnosis, is more like
mm,
free flowing, where you're not totally hypnotized as in actual hypnosis, but like you're guided along into the suggested uh, states and suggested direction. You know. So you have more of the freedom to daydream along with it, unlike a form of hypnosis.
yeah.
So that's basically flow dreaming. So you're still guided, but you're not. But you can cooperate with it. It's kind of interactive.
Mm, there it is again. Like I said, couldn't be having truth bars and bombs. So much that's up in there, y'all. Um, any other pros before we, at least I have one more question for daydreaming, and then we'll jump right into pros and cons of lucid dreaming, which will be like, what's the difference? But we got you. Um, but what you got? Anything else for pros?
Yeah, like I think just what I said earlier too about freeing yourself from systemic conditioning, and by that I mean like all of your subconscious limiting beliefs and self-sabotage patterns that came because of systemic racism, sexism, ableism, stuff like that, systemic oppression.
Mm,
Daydreaming can kind of um, temporarily liberate you from feeling constricted by those, uh, and then you flow into creativity. But
yes.
it just the feeling of freedom is a big deal when you're daydreaming. In fact, I think I vaguely
Mm,
remember like I don't quote me on this, but like there's been a sort of study of children, I
yes.
don't know what ages, where they've discovered that the only difference between uh, the children who were happy and unhappy were were that the children who were happy had the ability to stare at the wall or stare at the sky at the open space for like hours at a time. Like,
Hmm.
that was the only difference. Like,
And I mean, that's going back to that whole idea too. We talk about being able to expand the imagination and giving children that time too
mhm.
to help
Yeah.
to develop and take time to do
Hey,
that.
Kyle. Hi,
So
Mindy.
so again, depending on how you utilize daydreaming, is
Mm-hmm.
dependent on how effective it thinks it works for you. Now, it's going to be the same thing with the next topic. The next topic that's on this is connected, but the other thing is too. How do you know when you daydreaming?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing is, I know you'll catch yourself like just chilling in there for a moment. You don't know if your mind just wander off into a part in the space. But how do you know when you're daydreaming?
You usually don't know until after the fact, right? Usually. Sometimes you do catch yourself in the middle, but I think often you don't know until after the fact. It's almost like a related thing called deja vu, right?
Mm,
Most people uh, might not be aware that there are actually two types of deja vu.
go for it.
So, so first of all, what is deja vu? Deja vu is the feeling that you are experiencing, like what you're experiencing right now, you've already experienced before, meaning like the exact thing, like the exact event, right?
Yes.
That you've experienced exactly this before, but you don't even remember
Mm-hmm.
when, like, you know, it's the very first time, like logically, your logical mind knows this is the first time you're experiencing this. Uh,
Yes.
but there's this feeling that you've experienced this before. It's more like experience intensely when you go to an event for the first time because there's more of a control, right? Like a control experiment where, like, if you're in the park and you feel like you experienced this before, then you can't tell for sure if it's deja vu. But if you go to an event that you know has never happened before, you know, like
Yes.
the Dio Galamagos, the thing that we went last week, right? You know that
Mm,
hasn't happened before, right?
yes.
You experience deja vu during that time that you've experienced it before, then you know for sure that's deja vu, right? But there's two kinds. One is that you you're aware of the deja vu after the fact, where meaning you're remembering it already in the past.
Mm,
Like even though it's deja vu, like you felt like, oh, what you experienced just now is uh, you've experienced before. That's deja vu. But there's a second kind that once you start becoming more aware and you start opening up your awareness,
yeah.
you experience that more often where it's going into the future where you start becoming aware as you're about to go into deja vu. You start knowing that you start becoming aware. I'm about to go into deja vu. You start knowing before it happens, and that's like incredible. Like,
Speaking, you say that I've had that happen a few times, and for
mm-hmm,
me, I called that phenomenon. I called that having a matrix moment.
mm,
I don't know why, but I did. Like anytime where something I was thinking was about to end up happening, or if I saw something that I knew that I was like something like that's going to appear, I catch
mm-hmm,
myself and I'm just like, yo, I just had a Matrix moment. And you'd be like, what the heck is a
mm-hmm,
Matrix moment? And I would say it's that second one that you speak of when it comes to the deja vu. It's like, how did you know that? Or
mm-hmm,
sometimes I would say noticing a quote unquote like glitch or something, a change within your immediate surroundings just randomly is something like that. But yeah,
mm-hmm,
I'm glad
yeah,
you I'm glad you broke that down because most of the time when I would think of deja vu, it would be of something that has happened in the past,
mm-hmm,
and it for me it's something that happened in the past that I come back up to, or I actually had one of a deja vu that was one that was in the future, but I had it as a dream, and this
mm,
was as a kid, and this it was very specific. It wasn't necessarily like as in I knew exactly the names of these kids that I was meeting, but I had a deja vu about yo. I'm like I'm gonna be in summer school this year, and it's not summer school like I'm doing bad or anything in that case, but we do it just for something for me to do during the summer. I'm gonna be in summer school, and I'm gonna meet two new friends,
mm-hmm,
and this was like 2 3 weeks before any of that was gonna happen, and I already was just like in summer school I'm gonna meet two new friends. I see them
Mm-hmm.
sitting on a bench on this side over here. I'm like, and as a kid, I don't know what the heck that was. I was like, okay. Then those 2-3 weeks show up, and it comes to fruition. Cause I meet
Mm-hmm.
two new people, and they're right by the benches that I was looking, and I saw exactly where I seen them in my
Mm-hmm.
vision or whatever it was,
Yeah.
and I thought it was trippy. I even said to myself, because I learned as a kid, at least the name. I'm like, man, that's deja vu. Like what?
Mm-hmm.
So it was
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Yeah. That was the reason why I brought that up. Now I forgot. It is related to daydreaming, but
Yeah, I mean, in that sense of your mind wandering, and then it starts picking up things that either you're recollecting about the past. Because again, for those, if I didn't get to tell you the definition, daydream, and this is from the Free Dictionary, is a noun, and it says a dreamlike musing or fantasy while awake,
mm-hmm.
especially of the fulfillment of wishes or hopes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I said, when you're thinking or you're in that state of daydreaming, most of the time it's something that's fulfilling to you, and it's either you're putting out your wishes or hopes into some particular thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, um, I just wanted to at least bring that point up with daydreaming. But was there anything else that you had that comes to mind, Kundan, when we thinking of daydreaming? Before I switch to the last topic.
Yeah. Yeah, I lost my train of thought as I was explaining deja vu, but there is like a specific connection between the two, but maybe I'll remember later, so I'll just let it go. Which
There
is
it is.
so meta because
It's the tip of the tongue mixed with everything. See, y'all. Look, we just don't talk this stuff. We actually do these things. It can happen on live, or it can happen after the fact. So we just
it's
not
in real
talking just to
time.
give y'all words. It actually happens in real time. To give y'all more of an example, but with that, we'll get backing in with it. But next topic and the last topic for tonight, we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of lucid dreaming.
Mhm.
Now, when we're talking about lucid dreaming, y'all like, okay, what does lucid dreaming mean? And in this particular
Mhm.
case, this is going to be the first time, exclusive first time where I'll actually show a YouTube video that gives a good explanation and some examples of what lucid
Mhm.
dreaming is. And then I further will push on the points and add more definitions and
Mhm.
stuff to it. So for this point right now, y'all grab y'all popcorn. For Chris and everybody else, go ahead, grab your wings. I don't know, y'all eat wings on Wednesday, but like grab what you need to. And I'm gonna pop right here, and we're gonna watch a quick video on YouTube
Mhm.
about what lucid dreaming is. So, boom. And y'all let me know if y'all can hear it or not. Let me turn this bad boy up. All right.
What if we could control our dreams? When most of us dream, our thoughts and actions are involuntary. The dream plays out as if we were watching a movie. But not all dreams are the same. There is another kind of dreaming called lucid dreaming, which is more like playing a video game than watching a movie.
By definition, lucid dreaming is simply the act of knowing that you're dreaming whilst you're dreaming. My name is Matthew Walker. I am a professor of neuroscience and psychology at the University of California, Berkeley. Most people actually think of lucid dreaming more in the sense of actually beginning to control what you're dreaming. So you gain volitional control and you decide what's going to happen during your dream.
Frequent lucid dreamers claim that they can control many parts of the dream, such as teleporting themselves to another location, learning to improve real life skills, or even eating fire. It might sound far fetched, and until recently, we lacked the technology to prove if lucid dreaming was real or not. But a series of recent studies has shed light on the phenomenon.
Scientists have designed experiments and they've been able to demonstrate objectively that when people say that they're doing something in their dream, that they actually are.
In 2012, scientists
And this is all in fair use, YouTube. All right, all fair use. Don't get on me about this.
Scientists reported results from one of the first experiments that objectively measured lucid dreams using fMRI scanners. fMRIs measure the rate of blood flow to different areas of the brain, so they can relay information about a person's thoughts and actions simply through a series of images. For the study, scientists first asked participants to clench their fists while they were awake. This lit up key areas of the brain on the fMRI scanner. After that, participants were asked to fall asleep and dream about clenching their fists. Sure enough, similar regions of the brain lit up in both cases. Lucid dreaming comes naturally to some, but many of us have never experienced the sensation. However, that doesn't mean it's impossible.
Again, YouTube, this is all in fair use. Don't get on me.
How can we actually become more capable of lucid dreaming? Well, it's a little bit tricky, but you can certainly try to tell yourself that you will remember that you're dreaming whilst you're dreaming before you actually fall asleep. So try to go through a mantra chant, as it were. Some people actually try to do deliberative things whilst they're sleeping, like turning on the lights in a room, and that helps them to become aware that they are dreaming at the moment of dreaming itself, and therefore they gain lucid control.
Those who can already control their dreams with ease say lucid dreams aren't only for entertainment, but can also be used to expand one's conscious boundaries. On the other hand, lucid dreamers have also reported frightening accounts where they have trouble distinguishing reality from the dream.
Again, YouTube, we're almost done. Fair use. We appreciate you.
In some cases, this can be a sign of mental illness and should be taken seriously. But why do some people have the ability to lucid dream, but not others? And what is happening in our subconscious that triggers this experience? There's still a lot we have to learn about the causes and effects of lucid dreaming.
It seems to be only around 20 to 30% of the population are actually natural lucid dreamers. So perhaps if it was so beneficial, Mother Nature would have had all of us being capable of lucid dreaming. And the fact that we're not perhaps means that it's not necessarily beneficial, but we actually don't know. Maybe those 20 to 30% of people who do lucid dream are at the forefront of hominid evolution, and they are going to be the next species of preference. We just don't know.
Well, but yeah, y'all, that was a little, I say, 4-minute video on what lucid dreaming is, some examples, as well as some data and some tests to give y'all some background on what lucid dreaming is. So basically from that, y'all, we went from daydreaming, which is you're still awake when you're doing this, to we talk about lucid dreaming. The main thing about lucid dreaming is that you're asleep, but you know that you're asleep in your dream. So it's having that conscious awareness of knowing that, yes, I'm asleep, but that means I'm in my dream. So what ends up happening is, like it was saying in there, you're able to have more control and be able to pick where and what you're doing within your dream. I personally will say that I'm able to lucid dream because of the fact that every time I'm in my dream, I can tell myself where and what I'm doing and where I'm going, and I can switch wherever I want to end up going. But I don't know if it's like, again, they said there's only 20 to 30% of folks in the world, at least from the data, that are just natural lucid dreamers. That doesn't include if you're like dreaming and you dreaming of yourself falling and then you end up having a shape that brings you up. That's a whole different story. But it can be in connection with what lucid dreaming is. But ultimately, you know that you are awake and you're able to do things in your dreams that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do if you didn't know that you were awake. So that's the background of it. I'm not going to get like too more deeper into the science and things of that nature, but now we know what lucid dreaming is. I don't know if you had any comments or thoughts, Kundan, on like the video or what you've already currently know about lucid dreaming in any way, shape, or form. While I'm looking at the comments here, it says, one time I felt like my dream ended up in my room. I saw people walking around and I couldn't move. or different conversations. Sorry. Oh, you talking about, maybe, I don't know if you're talking about if that's sleep paralysis. I don't know, but if you're not able to move, that's a whole different story. It definitely is a whole different conversation. But it's all good. It's all good, brother.
Yeah.
Appreciate the comments still.
Yeah, I just had to like chuckle a bit at the end because it's such the way it just felt so colonial
The
the way he
information.
ended the video, where it's only 20 to 30% are beneficial. Uh, oh, it says only 20 to 30% of the population can do it. Maybe it's not so beneficial,
Yeah.
or they're at the forefront of hominid, like hominid evolution. I'm like, yeah, almost eugenics or white supremacist to me, like colonial, because I feel like in indigenous cultures, like it would be a different
Yes.
take where they don't consider lucid dreamers to be superior. They would just see them as just having a different role, and they would probably be put up as
Yes.
medicine
Mm-hmm.
men or healers or teachers or guides. Uh, yeah, like that kind of role, or the so-called shamans. All of these
Mm-hmm.
roles would be like what they would take, and there would be no like superiority complex around that. It's just like just another way of being human.
Yeah. Um, I can definitely see your point there.
Mhm.
In that critique of the video too. I appreciate that. Of like
Yeah.
having a critique. I know sometimes I look straight at just the the information to get
Mhm.
consensus. Another thing, y'all. This video was done in 2018, so this is about 3 years ago. So I mean, there's
Mhm.
more other updated information that can be added,
Yeah,
but
for
that's
sure.
what happens when you're in at least a country or a place that's very driven towards individuality again, that
Exactly.
one person has this particular skill that another other people don't, so now you're special, and you being that special means you have something over the other person that the other person doesn't have. Versus, I love the way you put it, because it started making me really think about not only Native American you know
Mhm.
tribes and different, like you said, indigenous folks, of how each person had their role. I mean, going back to the book that I
Mhm.
like to reference so much by Sombofu, when it came to the spiritual whole idea of love and relationships for African traditions and things, that each person within there had a particular role in how they played it, whether
Mhm.
if they identified as being, in this case, says homosexual and their homosexuality in the book, and how they had a particular role, where the kids had a particular role, as well as the men and the women, as well as you had your leaders and all those folks that's there.
Mhm.
And it's just seeing that each person played a part in the bigger role of being in this community. So with the people who are lucid dreamers, they might end up be able to solve, different situations
Mhm.
and different, problems in the world that not necessarily folks who can tap into that skill might be able to do. So
Mhm.
it's more so like what people can also bring to offer to help the whole immediate, not just world, but your community. Um, but I do
Mhm.
appreciate that piece and that point there, because I will say, when I think of lucid dreaming, it also makes me think very closely tied in to what people would say outer body experience, as well as astral projection in a particular way.
I
But
like you said that. That's like another level beyond lucid dreaming.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
That's exactly what I was going. Again, if y'all don't know, I
But
appreciate
that's just
Kundan
like
so
a
much.
fog. There is a fog. I'll get to it later, but that another level is just one of two paths above lucid dreaming. Astral travel is one level,
Mm-hmm.
but there's another path, that I would
Mm,
the Tibetan path, Tibetan Buddhism, which would known as clear light dreaming, which I can explain later.
mm. Yeah, going back to Tribe Called Quest. Yeah, I I
Mhm.
know that I know they had some aspects of that in their music and talking about that for sure.
Mhm.
But now when we're thinking of lucid dreaming, there and you're starting to think, or you're asking, like, okay, why did I come up with this topic? Why are we talking about daydreaming and
Mhm.
lucid dreaming? Well, one function of our living as humans most of the time. I don't know if it's a 1/3. I forgot the particular statistic on it, but 1/3, if not maybe a more less portion of that, we're asleep. Our life is
Mm-hmm.
lived in the bed. We're sleeping. So
Mm-hmm.
to have such a big chunk of your life involved, being at rest or sleeping, I wanted to at least bring that up because we know how important sleep is when it comes to not only the growth and the development of our brain, especially as kids, adults, and later on, as well as what sleeping actually promotes for your body.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar to when you are charging your phone or you're doing that. You're really basically, when you sleep, you're actually building your body up versus during the day, you're breaking your body down due to the anabolic and the whole other, forgot the other name for during the day, but you're building your body up when you're asleep. Now, reason why I bring up lucid dreaming is because, and you were saying in those terms, you had those two different loop ways to lucid dreaming. I definitely let you piggyback off of that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
is that especially nowadays, a lot of folks are starting to come into not only their awareness of how powerful sleep is, but also how powerful their dreams are and how people have different
Mm-hmm.
interpretations trying to figure out, why is this always showing up in my dream? What is this? I wish I could be able to dun
The
dun dun with
recurring
this.
dream. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it gets to a point of finding, okay, what are some methods of being able to have some influence and change things within my dream, or at least ask these people that might be reoccurring in my dream what's going on, and they keep disappearing, and be able to follow them. Um, and I've seen it around a lot. People start talking about lucid dreaming. So that's why I wanted to bring this up with daydreaming to pair it along with that. So I want you to go ahead, Kundan, to get with the points that you had, and then we're going to get into the main question, which we're going to get into the pros and cons of lucid dreaming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you were mentioning that the recurring dream, and that's interesting because I don't know if you know L. Luna, who eventually wrote the book, uh, The Crossroads of Should and Must, which
No.
actually it started off as an essay on Medium.com, and it went viral within a few days. Uh, and then that's why it eventually became a book a year later because it was so like popular.
Mm.
And even the title is rather intriguing, right? Like the crossroads of should and must. But her journey started off uh, through like getting a recurring dream, and at the time she was basically kind of what she considered like the pinnacle of her career. She was working for Dropbox was she was working with Dropbox as a
Hmm.
programmer there, and Dropbox was trying to create an email app that was going to be like the most cutting edge email, something like along those lines.
Yes.
And she was on that team. But during this time when she was supposed to be, so successful, uh, she kept having this recurring dream of a big giant white room, and it
Mm.
was like a big giant white house, something like that. And basically this big giant white space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And And at first she thought nothing of it, but since it kept happening, it started becoming almost like disturbing for her that she kept having this dream. So she
Mm.
asked a friend about it, and her friend said, "Why don't you look for that room in real life?" Like, and that didn't occur to her. So like for some reason she decided to take up her friend on it, and she started looking up. That very day she looked up Craigslist for like basically she just put giant white room for the Craigslist search. But like within like the first hour, I think, or maybe even the first few minutes, she saw like in the pictures, like she saw the room and she was like, she similar to deja vu, she just knew that is the room from her dream. Like she just knew it.
Mm.
So yeah. So she basically called, that apartment owner and basically, said, I want I want to check it out. So she went there, and she was surprised to see a very long line because she was like, "Wait a minute, this is my room." So and despite the long line, she was fine with it because she was like, "This is my room. Like I don't care about these this long line of people." And but anyway, she got the room, like just like she expected. And at the time, she was still living in this little apartment because it was San Francisco. Things are expensive there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but despite her money situation being not like she wasn't very sure about it, she decided to get that room anyways. And then she moved out of her apartment and she put her things in. And the moment she got into the room, like she was like, "What am I doing here?" Like, you know. Uh but suddenly, but suddenly she just felt an urge to paint. She felt like almost like a voice in her head. It's at this time to paint. So she started buying these giant canvases and paint, and she started painting with a fury she had never had before. And that's when she realized by becoming a designer, she had almost like sold out who she was really inside as an artist.
Hmm.
And that was like the beginning of her journey. Like,
Wow. See how powerful that is, y'all? Of not just the whole instance of just the lucid dreaming, but being able to interpret that and find it in having somebody tell you, oh, why don't you go look for that in real life? And being able to pinpoint it and it ends up solving some particular problem or situation. So yes, there's
a
different
problem she
books.
didn't even know she had because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Exactly. Because there's
Yeah.
books out there, y'all, to be looking in interpretations of dreams, and like there's certain points and figures and symbols that you'll see in your dreams that you can look up and find out what significance it is. But it's all up to you to go back and really start thinking about, okay, how can that apply, and where does what point and place does that play a role within my immediate life.
Hmm.
Now I may have not gave also another clear information of, like, for folks saw what lucid dreaming was, at least, or if you see this on the playback, you saw the video of what lucid dreaming is, but I didn't give you specifically what the word lucid means. And for those who don't know what lucid means, lucid basically means
Hmm.
something that is clearly expressed and is easily understood, as well as it's something that can be very bright or luminous. So like I got a lucid light right here that's on my face, as well as something that could be clear and transparent that you can just see right through it, or it just
Hmm.
flows. So I wanted to get that out
Hmm.
there. So when we talk about lucid dreaming, it's like literally you're able to see and have an influence of what's going on in your immediate dream and know that you are awake in that dream very clearly. It's not foggy, but it's very clearly. Um, Now, with that, and every time, y'all, I gotta appreciate Kundan because Kundan be on point, gives so many great examples, and this Kundan is a wealth of information and knowledge and wisdom of books, stories,
Hmm.
information, and all. So please, this is my quick little spiel. Please go follow Kundan. If you're here on Instagram, you can go and check after. I will definitely have Kundan's information, as well as you see him if you're on YouTube. I got my shows on Wednesdays, but tap in with this. Kundan has a lot. Um, Moving
Yeah.
to the next thing, pros and cons
Yeah. And
of
then we
lucid
can jump
dreaming.
to the clear light dreaming
And then,
after the pros and cons.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
So
when it
yeah.
comes to lucid dreaming, pros and cons, where do we want to take this? You want to start off with the pros, or you want to start with the cons?
Yeah, let's start with the cons because even the video hinted at it, the cons.
Mm, okay. All right. So what you got?
Well, they were saying in the video that people can become delusional because they no longer know the difference between the waking reality and their lucid dreams,
Mm-hmm.
which would make sense. Your dreams become more and more lucid. You start feeling like, wait a minute, is my the real life is also a dream? Like, how do I know the difference? Right.
Ooh. Yep.
Lucid, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When my lucid
Oh,
dreams feel
oh,
so
you start
real,
to
how do I
really,
know? You start to really question your own reality, and if you don't have a proper guide to
yes,
really ground you, you might just go psychotic, like with that question, right? Because you don't have, and that's why again in indigenous culture we have, proper guides to make sure that you see both realities as part of a larger reality, and
yeah,
you're guided through with a proper initiation, so you don't feel that false dichotomy or false binary. Yeah.
yes. And for those coming in, we're talking about the pros and cons of lucid dreaming. Shouts out to the
Mhm.
brother Darius in the building right now. Good to see you in here, brother. Hope all is well with you. And welcome to What's the Word Wednesdays, my man. I think it's the first time or it's not I've seen you on here, but appreciate you, brother. Um, so yes, I agree with that con because once you're able to really lucid dream, you're unable to see. You'll start being able to unable to distinguish between what is true and what is what is the a
Mhm.
dream in your reality. To quote the words Jamiroquai, man, it becomes virtual insanity. You don't know exactly where, what, when, or what is going on, and is that sometimes at points even the indicators that there's examples of for folks who are not necessarily as said that are natural lucid dreamers, that being able to give yourself indicators to let you know that you're asleep, whether you're clenching your fist or you turn on a light mentally when you're asleep that helps you, it becomes so hard if you're in that state of lucid dreaming. How do you get yourself out of it? Like, what is your cue to knock yourself out of
Mhm.
you not lucid dreaming? Is it you pinching yourself? Is it like dropping water on you? Like, what is it? And then if you're not able
Yeah.
to figure out what that
My
is,
dream had a key. Like he would sleep with the keychain in his fingers, and when the
yes.
keychain drops, it would wake him up, and that's how he would. That would be his anchor or his signal that he's in the real world, or not in the dream anymore.
Mm-hmm. But for those are for folks like that's a con. If you don't have those all set up, like you gotta have your plans when you get into stuff like this, and or if you're experiencing stuff like this. Um, Another con of lucid dreaming when
But
I
then you
sleep.
might like even with the keychain, similar to Inception, what if you start questioning, am I waking up in another dream? Dream inside a dream, or inside a dream, right? The three layers, like 3 or 4 layers of dreams inside the movie Inception. Like, yeah.
Well, you start confusing yourself. That's another con, is that your mind is
Yeah.
just completely gone and lost. You don't even you start to question everything down to the place, the pencil, whatever that you're using, to a point that
Mhm.
your cognitive function and you don't even know what to do with it anymore. Like
Mhm.
that's where too when people come into we'll step aside away from lucid dreaming real quick, but it's still connected. That's where when people come into information or they start becoming more aware or awake to certain situations around them and what's happening, they start to become very hypersensitive and hypercritical of whatever and everything is around them. That it gets to a point where
Mhm.
their thinking process is it gets so cynical and so critical to a point where like like why do I move my fingers, like like where does that
Mhm.
come from, where I get my energy from, like why do I write with a pencil, why do I sit down in this chair that I sit down. It gets to a point where you start questioning everything to a point where you don't have no basis of where you are in reality anymore, because just like everything that you're questioning is just not, it's just not what it is, and you don't think it is what it is,
Mhm.
because what if it isn't what it is, because you thought it might end up being something else. And it's just like that's when, shout out to the ghetto boys, that my mind starts playing tricks on me, and your
Mhm.
mind becomes your enemy. So that's another con when it comes to the lucid dreaming, is that your mind becomes your enemy at the end of the day. It
Mhm.
said so. What makes my next point: never do shrooms. Oh man. LSD, DT, DMT, all these other different type of, drugs. If like Kundan said, if it's not followed by somebody who is trained and is a guide in these things, you can find yourself becoming very lost. Because there is a way for you to experience these things and get to a deeper and higher level of consciousness or awareness and an experience. But you have to have, again, a plan and be proper with all of this stuff. You just don't go and start looking up information about Kundalini, your third eye, and all this other different stuff, and then you just throw yourself into it, so that all this information rushes at you, and you start to become so stressed out or something because you done literally fast-tracked your awakening and you don't know what to do because you didn't plan for it. You just was just looking all these things up without doing the proper preparation. Like, I'll give another example, and we'll get back into it. For me, and I know I told you about it before, Kundan, another example for me when not doing proper preparation and plans and stuff is I started wanting to learn more about what the method of sun gazing was. So for me, I started doing sun gazing earlier on before I came back to it when I was telling you that I finally finished my 9 months of doing it. But my first instances of doing sun gazing back around 2017, I did not do the proper preparation and the proper plans to set myself up to be successful. I just went ahead, Googled, find one article, read the first paragraph, and I was like, all right, done deal. I know what to do. And to my surprise, as well as to my detriment, which could have been really bad, I was doing it completely wrong. I was doing it at the wrong. I was at the right times of the day, but I didn't get the right timing between those hours, as well as the method is you have to ground yourself. I was over here on a mat looking like I'm a Buddhist over here. Oh, I'm doing this while I'm staring straight into the sun and not using. There's a method. I forgot what the name of the method is, but basically every day you add on 10 seconds of you looking at the sun. I did it, but I basically was doing it at a point where it was all completely off base and I wasn't getting at the right points of where the sun was the least harsh, or if not, it was safe to do so. So that first week that I was doing all of that, I literally almost lost sight in my left eye.
Yeah, you could have blinded yourself because you're not supposed to look directly. Yeah.
Yeah. So when they say don't look at the sun, yes and no. Because there's a such thing as looking at the sunset, and that has no particular, effect and things like that. It's a beautiful sight. But there's different points and times that you're supposed to do this. So my whole spiel with that is, and I didn't lose sight, y'all. I can see y'all. I got 20/20. I almost might have 20/10, but I'm just playing. But my point is, like, making sure that you plan and you have all those proper protocols set up, because if not, that's where, again, you get to the point with the lucid dreaming that your mind plays tricks on you. You get lost to a point where you don't have no grounding of where you are, either if you're here in reality or you're somewhere far off into some other land you've never been. So, yes, that's a con when it comes to lucid dreaming.
Yeah, like sometimes even if I'm not lucid dreaming, just even asking the question about this reality, like, what if I'm dreaming this? That can feel like very ungrounding for me, at least personally. I'm not even lucid dreaming. Just the question alone can feel like disorienting. Like, and again, probably because I'm just asking the question without the proper like orientation or guidance or training to even contemplate that question. Like,
Yes. Having some grounding, y'all. Any other cons you can think of when it comes to lucid dreaming? And look at y'all. It's not only just me and Kundan. Y'all are more than welcome to drop in some comments if y'all have with the pros and cons. We're gonna be doing we're doing the pros and cons, but right now we're on the cons. If y'all have any for lucid dreaming, what would be a con? Throw it down in the chat. I see the brother right here said I do that with indica and or eat a frog. You over here having frog
yeah.
legs, my man. Another con, lucid dreaming, and I'm gonna get this. I have a website up here, so I am low key cheating y'all. So just letting y'all know. Um, yes, it already says like what we were saying, which can have a negative impact on one's long lifetime mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it can also potentially, and this is another good thing. I thought of this too, but now I'm glad I just saw it again. What lucid dreaming also can do, the con is it can cause you to get lack of sleep
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that you're in this state of not knowing whether you're you know asleep or you're awake, so you don't know necessarily which one of those that you're in, so then you're also losing out on sleep because you might end up being awake but you think you're asleep. So we
Mm-hmm.
know how powerful, again, the sleep, getting sleep and quality time of that sleep. But when you're lucid dreaming and you don't have those anchors and those foundations, mm, because you're the REM cycle almost in itself is not really fully activated, because you might have already went through the REM cycle. If y'all don't know what the REM cycle is, that's the rapid eye movement cycle. So during the times of when you're sleeping, the rapid eye movement is you go through different cycles of that when you're going to sleep. So there's one portion of it where you start off in non-REM. That's when you're starting to slowly fall to sleep, which takes about around 5 to 15 minutes for you to be in non-REM. And then you go through the three cycles of REM, which it happens in intervals of an hour and 30 minutes. So between all of those different times, your eyes, if you see, y'all can go when you have your homies or your friends over at the house somewhere and you're still up and they're knocked out of sleep. I mean, don't go be super creepy, but like you can go walk over and like go check their eyes, and you can see in their eyelids that you'll see their eyes is doing something type of this nature going back and forth. You can tell that that's when they're starting to begin their REM sleep. It's where their eyes are
Mm-hmm.
moving rapidly to basically set them up for going to sleep.
Yeah.
With lucid dreaming, you're not too sure, because then at the fact that like you can still be in that state, but then at the same time, if you're awake, that doesn't mean that your eyes are necessarily moving. I've seen one of my homies sleep with their eyes closed and their eyes didn't even move. So I didn't know if necessarily homie was awake or if he was asleep. So that's where I feel like that's where that will have that negative impact of you not getting quality sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another con is basically it's also kind of related to being delusional or ungrounded. Ungrounded itself is another con, but related to that is like um, some people who are way too into it, I've noticed they're kind of cultish or creepy in their way, the way they relate to people. Like they're almost
Mm,
controlling. Because in the lucid dream, you can control anything you want. You can literally, manipulate reality, right? So, and including the people in the dreams, right? So
yeah.
when they're in
Mm-hmm.
their actual waking reality, they start wanting to have the same level of control and they start believing that they have it. And they start like becoming, at the very least, they start becoming very careless, right? Very cruel, where
Mm,
like the lack of empathy, where they're like, oh, what if people are dying in Afghanistan? It's all a dream, anyways, right? At the very least, they would get to the
mm,
level of the lack of empathy. But some people become even worse, and that's when they start getting into narcissistic abuse and control issues, where they literally are trying to reenact in their waking life what they're experiencing in their lucid dreams. They're like
yeah.
they really want to believe that
Much love, bro.
they're deities or they're gods. They want to play God basically in real life.
I feel that, and I'm glad you brought up that point too. I didn't say necessarily think of that, but that's a great point to bring up, because especially if we keep talking about not only this idea of like manifesting things within to your reality, And
Mm-hmm.
then you taking that deeper step into, well, now I can lucid dream, so now I can bring and evoke a lot of those things into my reality, just because I can go in between this dream world and still be awake, but then at the same time not too sure. You can start to have, you know, that kind of like God complex. You come back and you feel like you have, you know, control over everything that's going on in your environment, so that you begin to act those certain ways towards people, which can lead to different,
Mm-hmm.
you know, type of disorders and those type of those behaviors.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, so that's a really great point. I'm glad you brought that up. It made me also start to think of
Mm-hmm. And the Messiah
um,
complex. Yeah. Yeah. Similar.
hmm hmm another con that I was thinking about when it came to lucid dreaming is that, besides what we were talking about earlier, um, about with daydreaming, it's like a deep escapism,
Mm-hmm.
from the world, and that in itself can show in so many unhealthy ways. Whether shoot, you may not be eating right, like you literally are tapped out from the reality that you really think you're in, and then since you think you are asleep, but then you're also awake, and you think you're eating in your dream, but you're not possibly really eating, you can end up, not nourishing yourself in reality. So it starts to
Mm-hmm.
mess with your overall. Yes, we can talk. We says mental health, but like your overall just health,
Mm-hmm.
because you're on that line. You don't know. Did I eat? Did I drink some water? Did I go here? Did I do
Mm-hmm.
that? I mean, again,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have an anchor, and want to be an anchor, you don't have an idea. Be like, okay, what's the difference between me being here at school and me being in my bed, but knowing that I'm thinking about me dreaming and me being in school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on a related note, there's a thin line between so-called awakening or enlightenment and dissociation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in retrospect, I feel like a lot of white authors who are put on a pedestal, like Byron Katie, Eckhart Tolle, when I reread their, quote unquote origin stories, I'm like, wait a minute, those are not enlightenment experiences. Those are dissociation experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And people are putting them on a pedestal and seeing their books as, the greatest spiritual books on earth. And it's like, they're literally instruction manuals for dissociation and gaslighting. That's what those books actually are. And
Yes.
I feel like lucid dreaming can contribute to that. Once you gain the ability to do that, it contributes further to that dissociation.
Yes. And I wanted to go back to another brother's point that I saw, and he had to peace out, was one of the things he wrote down was potential to astral travel, as that being at least in between with lucid dreaming. He didn't necessarily say if it was a con or if it was a pro, but I mean, on the flip side, I mean, you were talking about those two different, realms, which I know you're going to get into after we
Yeah,
finish off of there. So
yeah,
maybe we will save that
yeah.
for that one in
Hmm.
particular.
Hmm.
But let's see. The other brother said, could you confuse this with confidence, thinking you're hot-ish, but everyone sees you as as not? Is that what my accent can it? Yeah. So that whole idea, like what Kundan was speaking about, is that in your reality you're able to control everything. So when you come back, you feel like you have just control over everything in your immediate environment, whether if that's people, whether if that's your family, friends, and all those stuff. So yes, it can start to build
It
up
sounds
on that
complex, yeah.
inflated ego, which
And
we
it's a
can see
huge
that.
drop when you realize the real reality is not like that, and people don't always listen to you. You might just become depressed, which would be the other swing, right, from the God complex.
Yes, you get what we. That's why there's a such thing, y'all, as when they say reality check.
Mm-hmm.
You get a reality check, so you can know for sure. Like you think you this. Oh, let me check you real quick. And for some people, and this will be funny, if you don't got no grounding, somebody can help you get grounded pretty soon with that reality check. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, brother.
Mm-hmm.
To answer back to your question in there, yeah, it can lead to that. Like we were saying, it might even lead to narcissism, but
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole other different part of that. But it's not necessarily saying those folks who are narcissists, you know, can also lucid dream. We're not making all of those different, correlations and things of that nature. But yes, like being able to have control and have that confidence and inflate the ego, or just that idea of yourself so much that you have a power and you're over somebody else, you're gonna be the next, evolution and
Mm-hmm.
humankind. Yeah, it makes you start feeling a little entitled to certain things, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily what it is. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, thank you for that. Thank you for that question.
Mm-hmm.
And um, any other cons before we jump into some pros, and then I definitely want to get to what you got for that, and we might have that as the last thing before we close out and give our final
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's good enough for the con.
For sure. All right, now let's flip to the flip side, y'all. Pros. Give us some pros now. But before we do that, we got a professional and a dope legend in the building, but he gotta go. Shout out to the brother Deluxe in the building. Rhyme Master, stand up. But appreciate you in here. Said dope convo. I'll check you later though. Off to bed to dream. Are you going to night dream, daydream, or are you going to lucid dream? I'm just playing. But nah, brother. Appreciate you coming through. Appreciate everybody who comes through. Catch you next time though. Right. Some pros.
Mm-hmm.
Pros of lucid dreaming.
Yeah, I think similar to daydreaming, problem solving is another pro. Like I think a lot of famous scientific discoveries like Kekule's discovery of the structure of the benzene ring, that the molecular
Mm,
was in a dream. I think he had a dream of the Ouroboros, the snake eating itself, and he realized, and then the snake eating itself became the
that's it.
benzene ring,
Mm,
and then
mm.
and then when he woke up, uh, yeah, he decided to test his what he saw in the dream, and he discovered that it was true. Like that was the structure of the benzene ring.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. A lot of the stuff, whether daydreaming or just being in your mind at times away from a certain activity, does just help with the problem solving. But again, if you're overthinking it too much, it can also be to your detriment, not helping you at all. But I agree still with the problem solving when it comes to lucid dreaming. Um, the brother talked about it as a con, but I can also see it as a pro, as in being able not only to use it to solve your problems, but from there helping to build your confidence in facing the
Mhm.
reality. So,
Yeah.
as in almost using your lucid dreaming as a training simulation to be like, if I do these certain things here within my dreams and figure it
Mhm.
out and come up with situations and stuff, I know I can do it when I'm awake. So
Mhm.
basically, almost like getting in the dojo, just like the Neo homie was brother talking about earlier, the Matrix, like Neo getting there in the dojo and literally figuring out like I've never learned how to do martial arts, anything of that nature. He gets this boot and download of all these different moves, and he's in there with Morpheus, and he's literally in there fighting with him. And it's like, yo, why is my body being able to do this? But it's literally just a training in there, training of the mind. So it's helping you to not only train your mind, which I'll say another pro is being able to strengthen your cognitive processes too. I feel that it lucid dreaming can definitely do that, giving you more.
Yeah, because you're at rest, so
Mm-hmm,
it's easier to develop those cognitive processes. Your mind body is more efficient. So that in
mm-hmm,
the daytime, it's almost like uh, sharpening your saw or your blade without using as much energy as you would in the daytime. So that by the
mm-hmm,
time you actually have uh, So it's almost like similar to how I think they did an experiment where basketball players with the control group just practice,
Yes.
uh, and
Mm-hmm.
then the other group had the guided visualization
Yes.
to throw it into the hoop, and the ones who went through the guided visualization did better than the people who just practiced. And so lucid dreaming can take that to a whole other level because it feels more real. So
Mm-hmm.
you can start building your skills in lucid dreaming so that by the time you do it in real life, you've improved like, several times than you would normally.
Mm-hmm.
Skills, like
Hmm. Now I'm starting to come up with, just since we like to connect things and we just make so many points that loop together. Now I'm looking at the whole process of not only just daydreaming, not only flow, but lucid dreaming all kind of coalescing together if you put it
yeah.
in a certain package. So you start
Mhm.
off with daydreaming about a particular thing that helps you get into that state of flow of what you're doing, and to help reinforce it later on when you go to sleep, you lucid dream about what you just did.
Mhm.
So I feel like that would
Exactly.
end up being a reinforcing thing, like
You
what you were just
believe,
saying with
yeah.
it. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And
And another pro. We'll give one
well,
more pro.
another pro would be basically one of the cons in moderation could
Yes.
be a pro. And what I mean by that is when I was saying how you start questioning your reality, right?
Yes.
Your waking reality, because you know your dream, when you're lucid dreaming, you know it's fake, but it feels very real and you can control it.
Yes.
And so when you'll be deaf when you're waking reality, you start questioning it. I feel like in moderation, having a little doubt about your waking reality is good
Yes.
because even just a question like, what if we are in a simulation, which is similar to what if we are in a dream, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it makes you take life in moderation. It makes you take life like a little less seriously, so you have a little bit more joy and freedom
Yeah. And fulfillment.
and fulfillment. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that point. It comes back to the whole idea, the whole concept in the word of balance. Like we say moderation,
Mhm.
but yes, definitely balance. Like everything in itself, it
Mhm.
has not only just the, of course, the dichotomies or the binaries, the two, this and that. There's a multitude of things either on a spectrum or in a cycle,
Mhm.
however you want to call it. But
Mhm.
it helps to have that resting point, that center point that interconnects all of those things together. So balance for sure with a lot of this stuff. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah. And similar to developing your skills, another pro could be there is a process that some people call quantum visualization or something like that, where
Mm,
it's based on the idea that maybe we are living in a multi-universe with many parallel selves living in other Earths. And uh, what if there's a version of you that is the the greatest athlete on earth, like the strongest body, right? The
yes.
healthiest body. And what if there's
Mm-hmm.
another version of you who is like the greatest scholar on earth, and another version of you who is like a great scientist, and another version that's a great inventor, another version of you that's a billionaire, right, who can handle money, right, really well. And what if true visualization, but with lucid dreaming, you can take that to another level. What if you can access those parallel selves and download
Mm,
and skills
yes.
and maybe even almost in some cases attain new skills overnight, right? And that's how some people end up becoming like multi-creative uh, in a few months or a few years instead of decades. They accelerate their skills and their growth.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I mean, just I mean a point to what that other video was talking about too is that it ends up expanding your consciousness even further
Mhm.
to those
Yeah.
points so that you can find those access points, those many parallel universes and those many doors. Since I'm still going off of a Matrix reference, so I'm talking Matrix Reloaded, of being able to be Jim Hunt, if I'm correct. Kim, is it Kim? I know it's one of them. I have a bar about it, but basically being able to be the key master and you can open up all these other doors that are in this infinite space of a hallway. Yeah, the space between what? I don't know the last part. Oh, the space between worlds.
Between worlds. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I talked
If y'all
about
need
it
book
last. I just posted
references,
about it. I just posted about it today in my list of top three books that expand your perspective. This book is one of them, and related to the skill building, I feel like what's wonderful about this book, this storytelling
yeah.
here, where it is about um, in the future Earth, they've discovered the ability to traverse between different worlds, different Earths,
Mm,
and there is a catch though that you can only travel to another Earth if the version of you on that Earth has already died.
hmm.
And so and so it's also that Earth is divided between rich and poor. There's the rich are in this walled city. The
Yeah.
poor die very quickly or very young. So
Mm-hmm.
because once they discover traversing, the rich people realize, oh my God, the poor people are actually valuable now because the likelihood that they're already dead in the other world is very high. So
Mm-hmm.
they've been now hired as travelers and paid very well. They're given a free apartment and everything. So, but the beauty of, you know, this story is that the parallel traveling is not a gimmick. It's actually integral to the story because it becomes a way for the main character or the protagonist to discover who she is and to grow. It's a way of self-exploration because when
Mm,
another version of herself that's very similar to her, and she's like, "Oh my God, wait a minute, am I like that? And do I want to be like that?"
yeah.
It starts making her grow morally, like, and there's a lot of character growth because she was able to, travel to other Earths and yeah. So it's like uh, So I feel like with lucid dreaming and quantum tunneling or whatever, you not only access different skill versions of you, maybe you can even access different stories of you and
Mm,
confronting uh, the dark parts of you or the parts of you that might need more growth that you haven't been willing to self-confront during the daytime because it's too difficult, but during lucid dreaming, it might be a little easier because you know it's not real. There's a level of distance.
message, y'all. Mm-mm-mm. But yeah, we'll stop it with that from here. We've had so much on that, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Going so I want you to give that example you was talking about with where lucid dreaming can go off into those two different points, and then wrap up with our final points, and we'll
Mhm.
be done with the episode for today. And I
Yeah.
appreciate your time.
Yeah, so there's astral travel, which a lot of
And we got South Africa in the building too.
hello and hello, Soul on Fire, I believe that's Mauricio. Welcome, welcome, that's my friend.
That's what's up.
And yeah, so astral travel, you probably know what that is already. A lot, in case people don't know, that's taking lucid dreaming to another level where you kind of, uh, yeah, almost like segueing from the space between worlds. It is almost like you are traveling out of body into different realms, different almost like your soul or your spirit gets out of your body and you start traveling the
Mm,
space between worlds. You start exploring different dimensions, things like that. And that's basically, astral travel the way I understand it.
yes.
And but there is a different path you can take after lucid dreaming, and that's from the Tibetan Bon Buddhist practice.
Hmm.
And my teacher, who wrote this book, Spontaneous Creativity, Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, he also
Okay.
wrote the book Tibetan Sound Healing. I have so
Mm,
many books of healing. I have also Awakening the Sacred Body
okay.
by him, and I believe he also wrote the Tibetan Yoga of Sleep and Dreaming, and he talks about that in that book. And there's also like many YouTube videos. It's where he talks, and his YouTube video on that subject is actually easier to understand and access.
Mm,
And so clear light dreaming is based on the principle that there are four, I believe, four lights, four kinds of light, or basically four kinds of awareness, right? He uses the word awareness and light almost interchangeably
hmm.
because they are on that level, they're kind of the same. And so basically, there are four states of consciousness related to that, right? So there is four pairs of consciousness, really. So there is uh, in meditation, there are your thoughts, right?
Yes.
And your thoughts kind of disturb you from the truth of who you are, from that open awareness,
Yes.
and so from the clear light, basically. And then when you're not meditating in your waking consciousness, he says that basically the events of your life uh, are more like the meaning that you give to the events of your life. They kind of interfere with the clear light, that open awareness, where you think the events are like the total reality and you get lost in it.
Mm,
And instead of stepping back and seeing a larger reality where you don't deny the events, but you see that there is more to this, right? And then in dreaming, I mean, in sleep, again, you get lost in the dreams and you think the dreams are real.
yeah.
And, and then in death, when you die, you get lost in a state called the bardo, which is the Tibetan equivalent of dreaming.
Mm,
Uh, that happens in the afterlife, where you can get lost in the bardo and think that's real. So all of these are like parallel equivalent things where you can get lost in your thoughts when you're
mm-hmm.
meditating. In your waking life, you can get lost in the events of the day.
Okay.
In your sleep, you can get lost in your dreams, right? And so basically, in that framework or perspective, dreaming and even lucid dreaming is not necessarily the highest state, where even if you're lucid dreaming, you're still kind of lost in the belief that this is real, right?
Mm,
And basically, clear light dreaming is like having seeing through the matrix, seeing the key to the matrix, where
mm,
you access the space, the open space that the dream is actually made out of.
yeah.
And what you try to do is basically, also, I interpret clear light dreaming is as a state of trying to be dreamless, almost like the opposite of lucid dreaming in a way for me, where because you're trying to get into what the dreams are made out of, the space
Yes.
from which dreams come, which is the clear light or the open awareness.
Mm,
Um, and these are just like words. They're like inaccurate. They're not the most accurate descriptions of what actually happens. They're like
mm,
approximations. But basically,
Hydrate.
you try to dissolve every like, well, you can try to get into a state he calls the stillness, the spaciousness, and the silence. And he calls them the
Mm.
three precious pearls because if you're getting lost in noisy words where you're hearing your voices of judgment,
Yes.
then you access the inner silence as a result. And if you're feeling too jittery, and you're uh, experiencing too much emotional turmoil in your body, then you access that inner stillness, right? And then if
Mm.
you're having little movies in your mind which are like either regrets about the past or worry about the future, when sometimes that's another way to get lost in your mind, right? You get these little movies, right? You see these little images and you think that's real. Then
Yes.
you access the inner spaciousness of the mind, right? So using those three things initially as a space holder for the clear light, you start exploring every single part of you that feels stuck, that feels constricted.
Hmm.
And then eventually you start dissolving it into the clear light and you bring it all the way into your forehead. And then you get out of your forehead and allow everything to dissolve into this vast, spacious, open, infinite clear light, or or as much as you can approximate infinity, right? Basically, at least if you can get into this
Mm.
open stillness of the space. And and it is a state that ironically is, if you experience this, and I've only experienced this twice in my life, even though I've been practicing this on and off for 3 years, right? I experience this as my I'm totally aware the entire time
Okay.
of what's happening, and yet my body is fully rested. And like I remember one of the two times very clearly where I was able to maintain it for 6 hours straight. And even though like technically I was awake, right? By the time I got out of that
Mm.
state, my body was fully rested, more rested than I would be in regular sleep.
Hmm.
And yet I was aware the whole time. I wasn't dreaming. I was like totally aware. Like I maintained a clear light awareness.
Hmm.
And it was like the most rejuvenating sleep I ever had, even though I didn't actually fall asleep. And the reason is he says that what happens in sleep, similar to what happens when you try to meditate, is you kind of give up. There's a giving up of consciousness, right? A giving up of the awareness. Similar to when you're
Mm.
meditating, you give up the awareness and fall into the thoughts. So in sleep, you give up the awareness and fall into the dream, right?
Mm.
And but clear light is more like, instead of a giving up, you enter into a restful sleep
Yeah.
space. You enter. It's not a giving up. It's an entering into a bigger space, and you realize that not only the reality of the dream, but the reality of the actual waking life itself is that space. You realize what it's all made up of. And that's what I was hinting at earlier when you realize there's a bigger reality behind both of these two, the
Yes.
dream and the waking. And that
Mm-hmm.
is that vast open space. In Hinduism, we call it Akash. Actually, in Buddhism, too, we call it Akash. And that's where my Akashic Records
Mm.
readings come from.
Resignate.
That's why
Mm.
that's why we stargazing. It's all like you access that source. And the reason why you do it as a practice in sleep, in dreaming, is because you're a lot more rested.
Yes.
In some ways, it's easier to awake to the clear light while you're sleeping or while you're in that restful state
Mm.
in a regular meditation, and that's why people do clear light dreaming. That's why
I
Tibetans do
was
that.
I was
basically.
gonna say, as you continue with that, it is because of the fact that we have these different our different brain waves that activate on different levels of consciousness and
Exactly.
wakefulness or sleepiness. So like for us during the day, we're using a lot of the beta, those beta
Hmm.
mind waves, and it's moving at a particular kilohertz, if I'm correct, or hertz in particular. And then we have our alpha, and then you have that delta,
Hmm.
and then you have that
Exactly.
theta, that literally is like slower but more concentrated, but you're
Hmm.
basically in that loose consciousness of whether you're in reality, but then also you're in sleeper and you just in the
Hmm.
unconscious. So yeah, just that's what made me think about the other different brain waves and how that has that type of influence. But please continue.
Yeah, and also in waking life, you have real like responsibilities that you legitimately, could be worrying about. So it's always like tugging at you. So it is a little bit harder to meditate during that waking life for that reason as well. Whereas almost like clear light dreaming is a form of meditation while you're asleep, quote unquote. Technically
Yeah.
not full sleep, but you are in that semi sleep awake state.
Mm.
And but it is difficult, easier said than done, and that's why I've only experienced this twice in my life. But even just the attempt, right? Even just the initial practice of doing this before I
Yes.
go to bed and go to sleep makes
Hmm.
my regular sleep a lot more restful and rejuvenated.
That's beautiful. It's because basically you're
Hmm.
doing that. You're doing that precursor to already get yourself already in that
Exactly,
state
yeah.
and mood a lot faster than just you know waiting for at least a regular
Hmm.
idea of realm, which rapid eye movement again for y'all,
Hmm.
and you're starting off in that non-realm state, which takes about around between 5 to 15 minutes to even get yourself there and situated. But you have a process that already gets you in that state before you do that. So then when you get into it, it's just so effortlessly done that you're already like tapped into that next point, so that you can even just progress on to the next step even more quickly.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. In fact, I recently realized that if I keep my awareness in my spine first before I get into the forehead, then it's easier. Like I fall asleep like a lot easier, and that's
Mm-hmm.
been helpful. That's because, like you, like with the sun gazing, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he has these in his book Tibetan Sound Healing. He has the five sounds that you make in order to
Yeah.
be to heal yourself and also be more creative. But he also has these preliminary five five-step breathing and movement practices that helps that you're kind of supposed to do. And for the first 3 years of reading this book, I didn't do that. And I started like
Mm.
just like 3 weeks ago, and it's been a huge difference. Where a lot of the breathing has to do with similar to the Taoist microcosmic orbit, uh, where you breathe in through your nostrils into apparently the two channels in your spine, and basically there's an energy channel going connecting your nostrils to the base of your spine. There's three of them.
Mm.
You
Mm.
breathe through two of them, and then it goes in and then goes up into the central channel. And then you breathe out in the kind of the same way. When you breathe out, it goes down the central channel and goes up the side channels. Basically, that's the breathing method. And then you
Mm.
combine that with several movement practices where you can take your breath first into your head, then you take it to your heart, then you take it to your navel, then you take it into uh, or then you take it throughout the whole central channel, and then you take it into the base of your spine, your pelvis area. So there's these five steps that you do, and then
Mm.
sounds, and it takes it to a whole other level when you do that. And I feel like when I sleep, now that I start my day with it, my sleep is easier because even when I sleep, I try to breathe in that way a little bit, and I become aware of that central channel. And
Mm.
just becoming aware of it just relaxes me so deeply. It's really amazing.
Man, that's beautiful. It made me start thinking of the whole chakra systems when it comes to to Naruto in particular when they talk about all the different chakra centers and stuff. But I know that's even on the other deeper level. A lot of these cartoons and these animations actually be having a lot of those hidden wisdoms in it that we don't see. But just because this
Yeah.
is about to be another record breaking show with the timing, I want us to go ahead and we're going to definitely wrap up. I want you to give your last thoughts to leave the people, and then I'll wrap it from here for tonight.
Hmm.
So, what do you have to end us with? Oh, Kun, do you have anything left to end us with before I do anything?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I also just wanted to comment briefly on how the whole Naruto and the After Airbender and all these series,
Yes.
it's too bad that they don't fully acknowledge the cultural roots of where these come from.
Hmm.
So the chakra system, which, by the way, the correct pronunciation is chakra, right, in Hindi, is the chakra
Mm.
system, is, uh, yeah, it comes from Hinduism and Buddhism. It's part of the whole cultural appropriation and dilution is how yeah, all of these roots and sources are kind of like ignored and become part of uh,
Yeah.
the whole white supremacist, it belongs to everyone or it belongs to no one kind of thing.
Mm. Mm.
So, and when it gets diluted and distorted in some ways, is when we get psychotic breakdowns, right? Like we addressed earlier, because I literally had a friend of mine who was part of this New Thought church that, in retrospect, had a lot of cultural appropriation and distortion where they had a. It was so funny, like they had a white man teach Sufism, a white man teach Buddhism, right?
Mm.
And I asked them one day, like, why don't you ever have a person of color, uh, or really, why don't you ever have the actual person of the actual culture teach the actual cultural source, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, wouldn't you rather learn from the actual source? And so it was the funniest thing. Like because I kept saying it, they finally brought a black couple minister to
Yeah.
teach. And the irony is, every single person that they quoted were like white people. And I'm like, isn't that ironic that when you finally have a black couple, they don't teach African culture, they teach more like white supremacist nonsense.
Uh, accommodation in the ways that is not the way that you would want it to end up being. Of course, you should know that. You ask for
Yeah.
popcorn. You ask for popcorn when you want to go to the movies, but instead they give you a Twizzler. I mean, you still got you something to watch the movie with, but it's not the popcorn. I
Hmm.
mean, it's a Twizzler. It's not even a bag of Twizzlers. It's just the Twizzler. One. But yeah,
Hmm.
um, appreciate you sharing that little
But
piece there.
but yeah, the reason why I brought it up was because a friend of mine who grew up in that church, she had a psychotic breakdown twice, and now I realize in retrospect it's because she grew up with such cultural distortion where she didn't know what she was doing.
Mm,
And it happened twice because the first time it happened, the people around her, instead of seeing it for the psychotic breakdown it was, they were like, oh, she must have had a Kundalini awakening, not a psychotic breakdown. But they didn't provide her with any grounding, even if it was true, any
yeah.
actual, like even if it was true, then they should literally bring the actual people of the culture, Hindus, because it's a close Hindu practice, to really ground her. That would be the ideal solution. But instead, because they had the superiority complex, they thought they knew what they were doing. They were like, oh, we will, you know, get you through this, and she had to be taken into the psychiatric ward a second time, right? So basically, I guess my final thoughts is a word of caution with these things, especially if you are going to be learning about these things from that are based on things like Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh cultures, then try to learn from the actual cultural sources, like and actually research the actual lineage as well, because sometimes just because they are from the culture, even then it can be a distortion. Like Kundalini yoga is totally a distortion because like even though the founder was South Asian,
Yeah.
he ended up creating a cult because he combined Hinduism and Sikhism uh, in ways he shouldn't have. They're not meant to be combined in that way, and he didn't even have the proper lineage.
Yeah.
So, so he ended up creating a cult basically, and it even's funding like a cult security, which is one of their organized the companies, the private security firms that their former Trump organization hired to put children in cages at their border. So it's
Wow.
all like interconnected. So yeah, it and like how is this organization that's supposed to be about love and light doing also that, right? It's because he created a cult and there are allegations of sex abuse and all of that stuff, right? Whereas that's why I talk about lineage. Whereas this author, Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, like not only is he actually Tibetan teaching Tibetan Buddhism, right?
Mm-hmm.
His lineage goes back 12,000 years. Like it can be like, you know,
Traced. Mm-hmm.
traced. Yeah. So,
Word of
so you have
caution.
to do your proper research, your due diligence, as always, like you always say.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to things like this,
Mm-hmm.
uh, if you don't want to get into the psychiatric ward, make sure that you try to get the the, the people, the teachers from the actual cultural sources, and make sure that they have the right lineage as well.
Mm. Beautiful. With that, y'all, we're at the point we wrap up. This has definitely been a record show, y'all. Appreciate it again. Always appreciate Kundan
Oh yeah,
bringing in thoughts, perspective, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and book references and recommendations. So if y'all be watching, y'all some book recommendations, watch this live, but also please again go follow Kundan and get more
yeah. Book
information on that
recommendations
way
every
too.
Wednesday on my
And
Instagram. Yeah.
and consultations too. If y'all want consultations, please
Yes.
do.
Mm-hmm.
Now to wrap up, when it comes to current events, again, this is the main part of it. It's awareness. Always making sure what's going on around you in your environment so you can be up to date with what to be looking out for so that you can plan properly for not only yourself, but for your family, your friends, and all those that you love in your community. Second,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to daydreaming, just know that the intention behind how you're daydreaming can rather help you to either overcome, become more creative, make you focus and on a laser, and it's interconnected to the flow. So it's actually helping you to not even get further into your dreams, but pinpointing on how to solve issues. So
Mm-hmm.
use your daydream as another skill. Lastly, when it comes to the pros and cons of lucid dreaming, I agree with Kundan here is being able to not only have that grounding and that key that lets you know what and how are you doing this, but also please take the proper steps and the proper planning to do all of this because you do not want to have yourself end up being on the other side of Skid Row or any other place that you're out over here thinking that you're in a mansion and in a palace, but in fact you're out on the road almost close to getting hit by a car or anything, which we do not plan any of that. I don't want any of that to
Mm-hmm.
happen to y'all. But just to be able to know the difference between the reality and what you're trying to search for to get to either a higher purpose, whatever you may be using it for. But please take the proper skills to look all of this stuff up and know what you're getting yourself into. But with that, again, appreciate you, Kundan. Appreciate everybody that watched, as well as those who are going to be watching this later on Instagram or YouTube. If it's on YouTube, Follow your boy at A.D.V.I.S.S Speaks. And don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for your boy, because there's more videos like these. They may be long, but I give you key points so then you know where to go. And we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers right now. I said we're around about 350. I think it's specifically 343. So let's keep pushing, y'all. So I got more content, more things coming your way. But with that, y'all, appreciate y'all. This has been another episode of What's the Word Wednesday, Season 2, Episode 26. I've been your brother, A.D.V.I.S.S. This has been Kundan. And we'll catch you next time for the next episode of What's the Word Wednesdays. But with that, peace, one love, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.